Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been around a while, thank you for sticking with us. This video is something special. It's a curated collection of stories we've been assembling for over a month, recorded at different times, in different moods, from different corners of a broken world. These aren't full-blown sagas, but raw, powerful fragments. Survivor voices, half-finished memories, strange moments, and warnings pulled from what's left of civilization. They come from all over, different countries, cultures, and conditions, but they all orbit the same event, the collapse that followed the zombie virus outbreak. Each voice here carries something unique: grief, resilience, horror, or bitter humor. Your support keeps this broadcast going, so if you enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment about where you're listening from, and giving it a like. It really helps more than you know. And if you want to go further, the channel has membership options for those who want to support long-form storytelling like this. And now, let's dim the lights, dial in the static, and hear what's left of the world. If you're hearing this voice, it means your radio still holds a spark of life. Just like you, it means the wires are intact, the antenna upright, and that the static still parts long enough for something more human to slip through. Welcome, listener. Welcome to another night in what's left of our world. I won't promise you answers, because by now, we all know answers ran out when the cities went quiet. But I can promise you stories, real stories, from real people who survived the unimaginable. It's been 11 years, 11 long years since the first news flashes broke. 11 years since the streets filled with confusion, then panic, and finally an unnatural silence that none of us can ever forget. 90%. That's the number they gave us before the broadcast went dark. 90% of all humans lost in less than 12 months. Can you even picture it? Whole cities emptied, towns hollowed out, countries erased from maps and history alike. Yet even 11 years later, it never seems like we've killed enough of them, does it? The dead still walk, still shuffle, still hunt, and we're the prey in a world flipped on its head. My name doesn't matter, but my voice is a familiar companion to many. Before all this, I was just another guy who fixed radios in a small shop outside Baltimore. Back then, life was about spare parts, soldering irons, and late-night troubleshooting. But life shifts fast, doesn't it? When everything crumbled, my wife and daughter were with me in Europe. Berlin. We were tourists, wide-eyed, laughing, lost in a city that wasn't ours when the virus caught fire and jumped borders. It started as news reports, curious stories we half ignored. Soon enough, curiosity turned into something else. When we realized what was happening, it was already too late. 11 years on, I'm still here, still breathing. But now Berlin is only ghosts and echoes, my family a memory that never quite leaves. For a long time, I stayed off the airwaves. I wandered, scavenged, drifted through empty towns and broken highways. But eventually, silence became more terrifying than static or the groans of the dead. So I came back to what I knew: the radios, transmitters, frequencies, waves of sound crackling in the darkness. I set up a relay station here, isolated, hidden, rebuilt from salvage and stubbornness, and began transmitting again, not to be heard, but to listen. Because even in the silence of the end, we humans have an unquenchable need to speak, to share, to leave some trace of ourselves behind, even if no one ever hears it. Over these years, I've gathered thousands of voices, hundreds of personal tales, fragmented logs, desperate cries, whispered confessions, sometimes detailed accounts of survival that would break even the hardest soul, all carefully recorded, labeled, archived on salvaged drives and battered cassette tapes. My vault of humanity. Tonight, I'll share some of these stories. Not because I want to frighten or reassure you. Those things belong to another time. Tonight is simply about memory, about the lives that refused to be silent even when the world tried to bury them. Some of you already know this. Others might be hearing English for the first time in a long time. It was the old world's trade language, the voice of airports, movies, and manuals. The majority of the surviving data, books, backups, recovered servers, still lives in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish in fragments. It's not a rule, just a fact of who got things online before the collapse. I translate where I can, but most of these voices will speak in English. Some broken, some poetic, some like ghosts. The recordings you're about to hear were made by survivors scattered across the globe. Different languages, different places, different ways of enduring what came after the dead rose. Some come from rusted towers above flooded valleys, others from lonely cabins deep in forests or burned-out vehicles stranded on broken highways. From deserts scorched by sun, cities blackened by bombs, or from the decks of drifting ships, these voices reached out, hoping someone was listening. What you're about to hear are those voices, one after the other. No breaks, no commentary, no judgment. Some tell of early days, when the world still thought this thing could be stopped. Others come from the long years since, when survival hardened into routine and monsters stopped being metaphors. These stories carry warnings, strategies, reflections, and lessons learned in blood. They speak of people who tried to hold on to civilization, who forged new laws in ruins, who fought to keep sanity even as bodies stacked higher than their walls. They describe enemies not just among the infected, but among ourselves, because when everything else collapses, human cruelty endures. Yet they also speak of unlikely alliances, bonds formed in impossible conditions, friendships and loves that defied despair, if only for a while. You'll hear their voices, some broken, some clear, some eloquent, some crude, but each absolutely real. You'll notice patterns. Some call the infected walkers, rotters, the grey, or worse. Some say nothing at all, just a whisper and a scrape of breath. Different places, different languages, different rules. Some places froze over and brought a few seasons of calm, others baked in heat and bred new mutations. Flooded zones, burned forests, whole suburbs drowned in silence. But one thing always returns, the sound of us, of people, clinging, failing, fighting, forgetting how to be gentle, remembering too late. I'm not here to persuade you. I'm not here to unravel conspiracies or speculate about cures or secret safe zones hidden in distant mountains. Tonight's not about who started this nightmare or when it might end. Maybe those answers exist. Maybe they never will. Tonight, I simply share the truth of what we became when faced with the unimaginable. Because sometimes, knowing we're not alone is all the hope we get. Today marks exactly 10 years since I lost my wife and daughter. I won't burden you with my story. Maybe someday, when I've run out of others to share, I'll whisper their names again. For now, this night belongs to those who spoke into the void, who sent their words out into static and storm, hoping that someone, somewhere, was listening. My equipment is fragile. These devices are relics from a world long gone, repaired 1,000 times over. Every broadcast could be the last. Every story could vanish with a sudden storm, an electrical short, or a careless mistake. So if this signal fades out, wait for tomorrow's broadcast. If tomorrow comes. If it doesn't, know that I tried. If you're listening, if your batteries hold, and if your receivers pick up my voice tonight, stay with me. You don't have to believe everything you hear. Some stories sound impossible, irrational, born from minds cracked by years alone. But each voice is a record of someone's truth. And truth, now more than ever, is something precious, something worth hearing. So lean in close, turn up the volume, keep your eyes on the horizon, and listen carefully. Tonight, you're not alone. Tonight, let their voices fill your darkness, and remember the world that was, the world that is, and the world we can still hope for. These are their stories, and this is our broadcast. Let's begin. They say we were monsters before the world ended, and maybe we were, but now, monsters are the only ones left who know how to hold a line. My name is Joao Fernando, former second lieutenant for Commando Oeste, operating across the old Villa Kennedy routes before everything fell. I used to push powder, coordinate runs across São João to the port, and lay down the law in the favelas where cops wouldn't go. When the infection started, most of us thought it was just another bad flu wave. The sick were dropping in the alleys, sure, but in the early days, we still controlled the neighborhoods. Block by block we ran patrols, knew the angles, owned the rooftops. What nobody expected was how fast the virus burned through the weak. The addicts, the street sleepers, the guys who used as currency. They were the first to turn, and they weren't like the rest of the infected. No slow stumble, no dragging groan. The ones who had heavy doses of cheap synthetic junk or cut cocaine in their system when they died came back wrong. We called them deadbeats. They don't feel pain, don't fall after a broken leg or jaw. You hit one of them and it just keeps coming, biting at nothing, gnashing air until it hits your throat. Some of them twitch when they move, like the drug still burns through rotten nerves. They slam into walls, bleed black foam from the mouth, crawl with speed, but in random angles like they're chasing some invisible ghost. We tried to contain them. We learned quick. Shoot the arms, the legs. It doesn't matter. You have to destroy the spine or take the head clean off. Anything less. And they're still a threat. We had to retrain every shooter. Ammo was tight even in year 1. By year 2, we were using scrap machetes and fire traps. Everyone learned fast, or died fast. The only reason we survived as long as we did is because we already had a chain of command. Drug lords became mayors. Enforcers became guards. Our runners turned into scouts and medics. And the dealers? They became supply officers, because no one knows how to stretch rations like a guy who used to move 10 kilos through sewer tunnels. We cleaned out an abandoned military base east of Resende, up near the foothills. Old place from the 1960s, meant for artillery drills. We welded the gates, repainted the concrete towers, turned the ammo bunkers into living quarters, put kids in the old officers' school, and armed women on the tower. We burned the trees within 50 meters in every direction so nothing could sneak up on us. Then we waited. And it worked. For a time. But time is the real killer. Every year, more people got sick. Not just from bites, from mold, infection, starvation, childbirth complications. No clinics left. No trained surgeons. A guy gets a rusty nail in his foot, and 3 weeks later we're building him a fire grave. We sent scouts to find meds, find people, find information. Most never came back. The deadbeats never went away either. The early generations, the ones who OD'd in back alleys and crumbled under bridges in Rio, somehow drifted all the way out here. We think they follow vibration, sound, maybe even scent markers. Who knows? They came at night, heads jerking, arms flailing like they were still in withdrawal, and they were always stronger than the usual rotter. Had to cut them to pieces to slow them down, and when you did, the stink stuck to you for hours. They didn't rot like the rest. One guy in our crew, Carlos, swore he saw one of them chewing through concrete insulation foam. I didn't believe him until it happened near the gate one night. Something got inside the outer wire without making a hole. The rebar frame was bent from the inside, and all we found was a half-destroyed corpse, with skin stretched like rubber tubing and teeth ground down to the nerves. We think the chemicals they overdosed on warped them. Not smart, not stronger in muscle, but harder to kill. Their decay rate is off, like the virus is preserving the worst parts for last. Today our community's down to maybe 45 people, 3 generations now, from over 200 just 2 years ago. The rules have changed. We don't bury anymore. We burn. We don't scout past the river. We don't take in strangers unless they offer us something vital. Information, schematics, working gear. We shoot on sight if they act crazy or have track marks. We can't take the risk of another deadbeat blooming inside the walls. I've lost good men. Lost my cousin, Renato, to a deadbeat 2 months ago. It leapt from a rooftop, landed with both legs broken but kept crawling. Tore him up before he could even scream. We cut it to shreds. Took 5 of us to hold it down. I couldn't bury Renato. We just burned both bodies on the gravel and watched the smoke drift toward the jungle. So yeah, maybe we were monsters once, but we've learned to fear the bigger monsters out there now. I keep this radio going because there might be someone else out there who's seeing the same thing. Not just the regular dead, the ones who don't break right, the ones that keep twitching, keep chewing. If you're infected, don't smell right. If they're foaming at the mouth, not bleeding, and their pupils look like cracked paint, burn them. You're dealing with deadbeats, and they don't stop. This is João Fernando, Comando Oeste, out of Fort Itaipava, still alive, still watching, still armed. Don't come near our walls unless you're ready to trade clean or die dirty. That's the law now. The first year of the outbreak, we thought the infected were the worst of it. We were wrong. The worst came with the monsoon. Tanawan used to be a sleepy city between volcano and lake. Nice houses, big churches, fish pens floating off the coast. When the infection came, most people ran north, toward Manila. Some got caught on the highway, some never left. I stayed behind because I knew what happens when cities panic. I turned my boat shed into a dry zone, reinforced roof, welded the shutters, filtered water through charcoal drums. I built a small pier that jutted into the floodplain. Thought I was clever. Then the typhoons came. Tropical storm Asuncion hit 2 weeks early. Not just rain, sheets, walls. Mudslides took out the main road. My shed held, for a while. But the real horror wasn't the storm. It was what it woke up. See, the infected don't breathe like us. They don't panic when submerged. When the flood came, it flushed them from caves, basements, septic tanks. Some were bloated, covered in algae, half-skinned. But they floated, faces just above water, arms trailing like seaweed. You couldn't always see them until they were inches away. One night I heard thumping on the side of the boat, thought it was debris, looked over with a headlamp, and saw 4 sets of eyes staring up. Not blinking, not moving, just waiting. I built traps, hooked netting from old tuna cages, sharpened bamboo stakes near the waterline. Didn't matter. Every day the tide brought more bodies. You didn't just need to guard the land, you needed to guard beneath. We tried using generators to power sump pumps, dry things out. But salt water got in everything, corroded fuses, shorted out backup inverters. The rain filled your food barrels. The dead filled your reservoir. After the 3rd storm, the survivors at Barangay Sambat built a floating platform out of refrigerator doors and oil drums, tried to ride it across to Mabini. The wind changed. We saw it drift south, with all of them still aboard, half-starved, no paddles, just waving. Later we found the raft beached in the mangroves, full of teeth marks. No bullets spent, no tools missing, but nothing left to recognize, but clothing. That's when I changed. I started pulling usable gear from drowned survivors. Flashlights, lighters, medkits. Didn't care who they were. I rigged a pulley system to lower people into flooded stores and let them tread water while I kept lookout with a fish gun. If they surfaced screaming, I cut the line. Didn't wait. You hesitate in the flood. You drown too. Some nights, lightning lights up the whole lake. You see the outlines of bodies below the surface. Dozens, suspended, mouths open. Not swimming, not walking, just drifting. They don't rot the same down there. Water preserves what should dissolve. I broadcast this now from a rebuilt rig in the treetops, 30 feet up. Batteries powered by a windmill made from satellite dishes and aluminum rods. I don't go near the water anymore. The lake's too still, and the drowned don't forget. If you're heading south toward Batangas, turn back. The rain isn't just wet, it's memory, and it brings everything that sank with it. Night ferries from Marseille to Ajaccio once carried tourists chasing Corsican beaches. By last autumn, they carried refugees, and pallets of antibiotics nobody admitted came from veterinary stock. I worked at the Piana, built in 2012, and holding 700 souls if you ignore the safety signs. On the 17th crossing after infection headlines, orders came to cap headcount at 500. By embarkation, we'd loaded 673, not counting infants wrapped in cargo nets. Port gendarmes nodded it through. Too many rifles pointed inland to fuss about weight. We warped off the berth an hour before curfew cannons signaled sunset. 3 hours out, swell gentle, mistral pushing abaft the beam. A junior purser radioed bridge. Suspected infection in vehicle deck. Family of 5 hidden behind a livestock trailer. Captain ordered quarantine protocol. Delta, secure bulkhead. Post-armed watch. Continue to Ajaccio. Disembark all well passengers first. Deliver infected to island garrison clinic. The watch was me and a Corsican able seaman named Mila, who kept 2 spare magazines taped to her wrist like charm bracelets. Vehicle deck reeks of diesel and sun-cured sheep droppings even on good days. We traced the family by coughing echoes. Mother slumped against wheel well, crimson bib staining blouse. Father knelt beside, pulse lost, whispering Ave Maria under breath that whistled. 2 boys, maybe 10, clutching each other, no wounds visible. Infant asleep on a seat of straw, skin fever glazed. 1 boy asked for water. Regulations said distance 5 meters, no aid. Mila handed me a tie-down bar, leveled pistol, and told the father to stand clear. He raised palms, voice hoarse. Take the children, shoot me. Then the mother twitched. Jaw unhinged, teeth snapped at air, though eyelids never opened. She lunged so fast, knees cracked the metal. Father wrapped arms around her, shouted to shoot. Mila did, round straight through both skulls. Ricochet pinged a bulkhead. Sparks danced among straw. Boys screamed but didn't run. I herded them up the ramp toward forward lounge, repeating, Ils vont tide, but deck crew blocked the hatch, rifles level. No exceptions. Captain came down, saw blood pool creeping toward bilge grates, and made his decision. Lock vehicle deck, flood fire suppression CO2, flush atmosphere for 30 minutes, vent to sea. Whoever lived, lived. Whoever didn't, numbers looked cleaner on a log. My protest was 1 sentence. Children breathe same as freight. He answered, freight doesn't kill ticket holders. He signed the incident sheet, time-stamped, stepped away. I carried the boys back anyway, hid them in a rescue boat locker starboard side under bulk survival suits. CO2 sirens wailed 20 minutes later, white frost rolling across tire stacks as systems purged. I watched through visor window. Father's body shook, convulsed, stilled. Mother already motionless. Infant never stirred. I still hear the metal deck tick with contracting cold each time I try to sleep. At Ajaccio Customs Pier, military doctors waved Geiger counter wands repurposed as fever scanners. Captain declared no infections on board. Manifest showed -3 passengers. Administrative error. I smuggled the boys down Passerelle opposite the terminal, paid a dock worker 2 cartons of Gauloises to drive them inland toward Visavona Forest, where hamlets still lit hearth fires. Mila covered my retreat, lying to gendarmes that a ballast pump gasket needed her inspection. 2 crossings later, Piana never made port. AIS showed her ghost riding circles off Calvi, beacon dark. Rumor says passengers mutinied after another quarantine. Others claim Navy gunboats scuttled her to keep infection off the island. Sea doesn't return receipts. Monks evacuated decades ago. Stone walls still remember prayers, so they whisper less guilt than harbor taverns. Each dusk I climb, call for les frères des bateaux perdus, brothers of the lost boats. Sometimes a child's voice answers from Corsican hills, reading weather the way schoolmasters drill seasons. I picture 2 boys, older shielding younger, repeating wind speeds because grown-ups once praised recitation. If captains ever anchor in Marseille again, I will not crew their decks. Instead, I'll ferry anyone who still belongs to land, on a rowboat if that's left. You want to hear something funny? The first few weeks of the end, I didn't even know it was real. I thought I'd finally gone and broken myself for good. Thought it was the bottle, or the pills, or the bad shrimp I ate from that roadhouse out past Caboolture. I thought the rotters were in my head. Some vivid punishment dream come to collect the tab I'd been ducking since 1999. My name's Loretta, but that doesn't matter. I've gone by 100 names, depending who's buying the drinks. Back before it all, I lived in a 2-room flat above a laundromat in Logan. Spent most days watching the paint peel. Most nights looking for warmth in the shape of a man who'd fall asleep faster than me. I'd slip out of bed with whatever was in his wallet. Sometimes I left a note. Usually not. I didn't call it stealing back then. I called it fair trade. A night for a few bucks. My body for their credit card pin scrawled on the back of a crumpled grocery receipt. The world was already a slow apocalypse for people like me. I didn't really notice when it got louder. The day the phone stopped working, I figured I'd been cut off again. Missed payment or something. When the telly flickered out mid-broadcast, I thought it was the building. When I saw my neighbor, a girl I used to score from, gnawing on a possum in the stairwell, I thought, right, detox is going sideways. Again. I went back inside, locked the door, and drank until I passed out. It wasn't until I came to and saw 3 bodies burning on the train tracks that I thought maybe I hadn't just imagined the end. That was almost 4 years ago now. Doesn't matter. I got out of the city by accident, hitched a ride with a bloke named Todd who thought I was crying because I'd lost someone. Truth was, I hadn't even called my mum in 7 years. He fed me, gave me a blanket, and by the time he nodded off in the back of the van, I was gone with half the food and his solar charger. I did the same thing again and again. Show up looking like I'd just crawled out of a drain pipe. Wasn't far from the truth. Talk soft, stutter a little, say I was scared and alone. Most of the men, and even some women, would take me in, give me a spot near the fire, let me into their plans, their caches, their gear lists. They assumed I was weak. They saw a lonely, worn-out woman with messy hair and a nervous voice. They never saw the screwdriver in my boot or the flat of razor blades stitched into my belt lining. People always think they're the clever one, even now. Especially now. That's the thing nobody talks about. The collapse didn't erase the game, it just raised the stakes. You still have manipulators and marks, liars and believers, predators and prey. And me, I've always been in between. These days I stay in the old outskirts of Brisbane, near where the eucalyptus forests start to reclaim the roads. There's a flooded rail yard I sleep above, in a signal house that only leaks when it rains hard. I've rigged the stairs with loose nails and tripwire. No one makes it up without me hearing. I still work the same trade, just on a tighter leash. There's gangs now, real ones, not just patched biker crews or wannabe warlords. I'm talking proper organized crews, ex-security contractors, some ex-military, big lads with heavy boots and mirrored sunglasses, even if there's no sun anymore. They come through looking for fuel, clean water, and women. Sometimes I play the part. Sometimes I let them think I'm just background noise, someone to ignore while they deal with the real threats. That's when I strike. You'd be surprised how fast a man bleeds out when you hit the artery just above the groin, especially if he's half drunk and thinks you're reaching for something else. I've done things I'll never be proud of, but that's not the point. Pride went out with electricity. I've survived, and I've kept other women alive too. One's worse off than me. I gave an older woman shelter last winter when she couldn't feel her toes. We shared what we had, and I taught her how to strip an old car battery without killing herself. She left in the spring, took half the ammo, but didn't slit my throat in my sleep, so I count that a win. I don't trust anyone for long. I don't let them close. I don't ask names. I've stopped lying about mine though. Loretta feels like a ghost's name now, and maybe that's what I've become. A shape that moves through what's left, silent, dry, and always one step ahead of someone dumber. You want honesty? Here it is. I like this world better than the last one. Out there, back before, I was a stain, a mistake people regretted, a story they never told their mates. I was someone who ruined nights and overdrew accounts. But here, I'm useful, I'm sharp, I'm needed, even if it's just for a night, even if they don't know it yet. I keep hearing radio calls about safe zones in Cairns or deep in the outback. Maybe it's real, maybe not, but I'm not going. I've lived too long in the margins to believe that walls and ration cards are what make people good again. They never were. The best you can do is survive with what you've got. Use what you know, and never pretend that this world owes you redemption. I drink less now, can't afford the dull edge. The bad thoughts still come, but I keep my hands busy. I trade when I can. I steal when I must. And if a man dies with a smile because he thought I was going to kiss him and not take his keys, then so be it. Better him than me. If you hear this, don't come looking. I'm not the rescue you think I am. I'm Loretta, still here, still surviving, still waiting for the next fool who thinks I'm weak. This is John M. Layton, former Senator, State of New York, District 43. If you're hearing this, I'm not dead. Yet. But the estate's been quiet for over 6 days. That's either a good sign for me or a very bad one for you. Let me tell you something the press never did. We, those of us with clearance, we knew long before the alarms went off. The virus didn't break the world in a single day. It bled into it, whispered through logistics meetings, lab memos, unsent press releases. Some of us watched it unfold line by line. By late December of the first year, I'd already cleared my calendar for the next 5. I took my final briefings, transferred my funds, and drove north before the interstates locked up. By January, I was gone from Albany, gone from the capital. Just another name with a blue checkmark no one cared about anymore. But I didn't go alone. My wife Ellen and our 2 sons came with me. So did Marisol Paredes, the woman who used to clean the house's guest wing twice a week, and her family. I'd never planned on them joining us. But when I called to tell her not to come anymore, she asked me why. I paused too long. She knew something was wrong, and I couldn't shake it. I told her to pack, to come, that I'd make room. Her husband Miguel and her 2 boys, Luis and Gabriel, arrived 2 days later. I'll never forget the way they looked at the compound, like it was something sacred. To me, it was just over-prepared real estate. 4,000 square feet of security paranoia built long before I ever took office. We had solar with underground redundancy, a freshwater well drilled into the shale, diesel tanks buried under the greenhouse, food sealed into vacuum cans, and shelf containers in a walk-in bunker. 2 years of it, minimum. Guns, ammo, first aid, farming guides, livestock DNA kits. Everything a scared senator with money and insider information might hoard. For a while it worked. The first 6 months were organized. Miguel helped secure the perimeter and repair the backup power grid. Ellen maintained inventory logs like she was still running a congressional office. Marisol replanted the greenhouse every 3rd week. The kids went quiet, kept busy. We had a schedule, even a schooling routine. We watched the world fall through shortwave blurts and flashes of satellite feed. Then fall came again, and with it, the rot. We were 50 miles from the nearest confirmed infected zone. I'd paid handsomely for that buffer, but the roads didn't respect property lines. Stragglers made it through. The first one came in the fog, shuffling through a downed fence line, still wearing the uniform of a state corrections officer. His lower jaw was missing. We found him halfway into the orchard, mouthless but reaching, dragging one leg like a stick caught in a bicycle spoke. It took 5 bullets to put him down. We buried him under lime and ash. No one slept that night. After that, we rewired the floodlights, added tripwires. We built a lookout post out of old lumber, 20 feet up in the pine grove. Luis stayed up there most nights, watching the tree line for motion. He was 15, too young to carry the weight, but none of us had the heart to tell him no. By month 16, things started to slip. Miguel fell from the 2nd floor roof while clearing snow off the panels, broke his hip and split his knee open on the metal edge of the gutter. I tried to set it. Ellen made poultices from dried yarrow and vodka, but infection spread anyway. Fever took him in 5 days. He never turned. We burned his body before that could happen, but the hole he left was heavier than anything the snow ever laid on us. Marisol changed after that. Her hands worked the same, but her voice got thinner. I'd find her staring out the window during supper, eyes glazed, whispering prayers under her breath. And me? I stopped pretending I could lead anyone. I started sleeping in the radio room, listening, hoping for anything new. A repeat signal, a survivor net, an SOS with coordinates. Sometimes I'd hear voices, crackled, distant, talking about roads west of Buffalo or fires in Binghamton, but nothing concrete, nothing close. The food held longer than I thought. The power stayed. The walls didn't collapse. But our hope did. And what haunts me more than anything is the fact that I was ready. I was too ready. I bought survival. I had more gear than a National Guard post, but I never thought to prepare for what came after. The days without noise, the way children stop speaking when grief sets in, the look Ellen gave me every time she counted the rations and recalculated what we'd lost. Last week, Marisol left, packed a canvas bag, took the smaller rifle, and walked into the fog without a word. Said she needed to find her eldest, who'd left with a caravan months earlier and never returned. She left her youngest with me. He doesn't speak now, just sits by the radio tower, drawing circles in the dust with a stick. So here we are, 1.5 years after the fall, survivors of our own making, trapped in a house built on foresight and fear. The food is still good, the power still flows, but every day, the silence grows heavier. If you're out there, and you think money or title or planning will save you, let me be clear. Preparation buys you time, nothing more. The virus doesn't care who you were, and the silence doesn't honor who you tried to be. This is John M. Layton, former senator. I am no longer in office. I am no longer in control, but I am still here, still transmitting. If you hear this, head south. Avoid Route 17. The bridge at Callicoon is gone. The river's flooded again, and the dead don't need roads. Take care of each other. That's all we have left worth saving. On the morning the briefings died, we launched at 0700 from Bankstown, with orders to collect medical staff from Royal Prince Alfred Hospital roof pad. City Control still answered then, voice clipped, repeating, priority medevac only. Parramatta Road below shimmered with stalled cars turned sideways like dominoes. Infected moved among them, slow, heads swiveling to rotor-chop. We landed on RPA at 0722. Roof team rolled out 2 stretchers, then backed away, hands signaling all yours. When skid weight settled, door gunner Steve Thurston pointed at the lifts. More staff waved, begging space we didn't have. Manifest capped at 8 survivors. I took 10, closed cabin, bled torque, nosed east toward open water. Harbour glare showed a queue of small boats circling Fort Denison, horns blaring, people waving white shirts. Orders routed us to Garden Island Naval Hardstand. Tower never answered, but beacon still blinked. Fuel bowsers idle, no refuelers. I set down on helipad Charlie. Steve jumped to secure tie-downs, came running back shaking his head. Jet A tanks padlocked, keys missing. Without top-off we had 52 minutes reserve, no cushion for second sortie. Radio crackled. Rescue 307, divert to Barangaroo, rooftop, 6 EVA personnel. No call sign, just a nasal voice. Barangaroo is tight canyon between glass towers. Rotor wash there could shred any line of refugees hanging from balconies. Yet denial wears uniforms. I lifted, flew northwest, cleared Harbour Bridge pylons, banked left over PYRMONT Bay. Rooftop looked like a stadium concourse. Hundreds shoulder to shoulder, waving anything reflective. I overflew once, saw crowds surge toward fire stairs. Weight estimate far exceeded max gross. Co-pilot Kimiko Sato read fuel, 43 minutes. Controller voice repeated, priority VIP package, 6 souls only. I asked for visual ID, reply static. I flared, touched skids long enough for Steve to jump out, shout names. Crowd folded over him like surf. He re-emerged pulled by Kimiko's hoist sling empty-handed, visor smeared red. Not his blood, he said. Someone crushed against chin guard. Cabin already over limit. Rotors drooped under heat haze and desperation. With 20 seconds to mast bump, we hauled collective and skimmed rooftops toward open harbour. Mrs. Macquarie's chair overflowed with evacuees waving flare smoke. Beyond, at Fort Jackson, I saw Navy MRH-90 Taipan lifting with 0 passengers, belly tank fitted, rotors feathered for endurance. They'd been told same as us, save fuel, not people. We chose Shark Island as drop zone sandbar narrow enough to defend, clear line of sight all bearings. Set down, offloaded 18 souls total, including a child no older than 5 clutching a portable ventilator running on last battery bar. I promised to return. Fuel read 25 minutes to bingo. Nearest safe Bowser, Richmond RAAF, 40+ flight time against headwind. Kimiko pointed to harbour fuel barge Delta Pacific drifting unmanned off Rose Bay. No guarantee of grade, but better than flame out. We descended, Steve fast-roped with hose coupler, cracked hatch, hand-pumped kerosene that smelled like it slept with salt water for days. While gauges inched upward, Steve yelled up comms, movement on starboard deck. Walkers poured from crew quarters, half-dressed engineers we hadn't seen. They shambled across slick deck toward rotor arc. Couldn't pull hose without dumping fuel. Instead, I eased collective, kept skid hard on deck so blades stayed above heads. One walker climbed ladder, grabbed tail boom mount. Strain meter ticked yellow. Fuel 600 pounds. Enough. I spooled up, jettisoned hose, rose vertical. Tail rotor wash flung bodies over rails. Some splashed, some thudded wheelhouse roof. Tower at Richmond silent, but tack and beaconed. I landed on taxiway Gulf, rotors turning, left engines idle while we hauled 40-litre drums from abandoned refueler into belly tank. 3 training hawks sat cold, canopies open, no pilots, field gates ajar. We returned to Shark Island 1 hour past civil dusk. Flares still burned but no crowd. Beach littered with medical wrappers, ventilator cracked. One set of footprints led into water. Thermal cam found nothing warm on the island except gulls. Kimiko whispered she could still smell ventilator plastic melting in rotor exhaust. We limped north that night, hopped coastlines, always lifting empty because orders prioritized fuel for unforeseen escalation. Every flight hour fixed the truth. Rescue craft were now scouts for places worth saving later. People waving from roofs weren't coordinates, they were fuel penalties. I keep Rescue 307 at a hayfield outside Grafton. Solar charger tops avionics battery enough to TX this handheld. Rotor blades droop like tired wings. If you hear me, do not wait on pad lights. The birds overhead carry only excuses and reserve fuel. When you live in a city like Tokyo, you always assume you'll be warned. Everything here is alarms, drills, signs. There's a button for every disaster. We practiced for earthquakes monthly, fire once a semester. Even North Korean missiles had their own protocol. But when the infection arrived, there was no alarm. I was in the 12th floor classroom of a glass and steel prep academy in Shinjuku. Tuesday, late afternoon. We were reviewing English poetry. Yeats, I think. I was writing Second Coming on the board. That irony haunts me. The first thing that felt wrong was the silence. Tokyo is never silent. But that afternoon, the hallway was quiet. Not hushed. Empty. We heard a bang, then another. Not loud like an explosion. Dull, wet, like something hitting glass. I looked out the window and saw movement across the street in the upper floors of a corporate tower. Figures pressed against the windows, then slipping away. Then, a woman fell. Just dropped. Not pushed. No scream. Just her body folding midair like she was made of paper. She hit a parked taxi. The entire class went quiet. One student laughed. Just a reflex. He stopped almost immediately. Then another fell, and another. Some of them were alive when they jumped. Some, not anymore. I ordered the students to get down, lock the door, draw the blinds. But we were 12 floors up. I didn't even know what we were hiding from. The building across the way? It caught fire. Slow at first, smoke from the middle floors. We watched as people began climbing down exterior maintenance stairs. One slipped, landed badly. His body twitched, then stilled, then stood back up. That's when I understood. I'd seen the footage. We all had. But that was in France, in the States, in poor coastal towns in Vietnam. Not here. Not in the center of the most organized, technocratic city in the world. I tried to lead the students down, but the elevators were out. We descended 11 floors on foot, 15 students, 3 who refused to speak, 1 who vomited on the second landing and refused to stop holding my hand. On the 3rd floor we met a janitor bleeding from his eye. He didn't ask for help, he didn't make a sound, just stood there, hand on his mop, until one of the older boys stepped forward and hit him in the side of the head with a fire extinguisher. That sound, the clang, the way the janitor didn't cry out, just crumpled, will stay in me forever. By the time we reached the 1st floor, sirens were everywhere, but not moving, just parked and blaring. The street outside looked like a museum of panic. Empty cars, broken umbrellas, one shoe here, a phone there. We walked for 2 hours until we reached the Sumida River. The bridges were blocked, not by police, by citizens, crowds, armed with rebar and hoses, pushing anyone back who approached from the Shinjuku direction. I begged them. I told them I had students. They didn't care. They shouted something about containment, about not letting it spread. I lost 5 students that night, not to the infected, but to fear, dehydration, confusion. One girl simply walked away. I never saw her again. I still live, but I no longer teach. I volunteer at a shelter north of Chichibu on a former campground. We grow vegetables. We teach children how to listen to silence and recognize what kind it is. The kind that comes from peace, or the kind right before the world tilts. We were told to report to Soldier Field, the Bears Stadium, lakefront wind tunneling through those open stands, because the National Guard needed medical staff. Day 46 of the outbreak for Chicago, but downtown still clung to duty rosters. I grabbed my trauma bag, rode a police truck down Lakeshore Drive past burned-out SUVs and joggers who'd turned into shamblers and drifted into the barrier fences. Command turned the field into Zone C1 quarantine center. Upper concourse held triage tents. Locker rooms stored rations under fluorescent lamps wired to a mobile grid. Whoever planned capacity underestimated panic. By the time my shift badge printed, the headcount boards read 8,000 civilians, 400 troops, 200 volunteers. Lines for intake curved through vomit slicks on the access tunnels. Day shift. I debrided bites until my gloves split. Plenty were dog maul lookalikes, people too scared to admit the dog walked on 2 legs. Guards tagged any suspicious wounds with bright orange tape. Orange wrists went straight to Section D under the North Grandstand. Nobody came back from Section D. Food riot began on hour A17. Ration pallets delayed by rail blockages. Crowd surged the supply gate, rattling chain link. Captain Harris, a National Guard officer younger than some of the IV pumps, ordered 1 warning discharge into turf. Crowd backed a step, then pressed harder. Guards fired a volley. I counted 7 down before the rest scattered like billiard balls. 1 slug ricocheted, punched the fuel bladder of a stadium gator cart. Stench of diesel rolled under the bleachers, sour and heavy. That night, a medtech, Donnie Ridder, transferred patients alone. He zipped a gurney bag, scanned badge, rolled towards Section D, then wheeled around and hustled opposite direction. I stopped him. The bag twitched. We unzipped 6 inches. Eyes stared up, cloudy yet moving. Donnie whispered. Triage said orange tags overflowed. We're dumping them in the visitors' tunnel. Lock the doors both ends. I followed. Visitors' tunnel lights burned white. 30-plus gurney bags stacked like cordwood. Zips rattling as bodies reanimated inside vinyl. No headshots. Just tape over bites. Names still pinned. Lieutenant at the door logged inventory. Date, count, room number, paper form. Ink smudged where his glove shook. Hour B05. Sirens inside the stadium. A HVAC vent over Section 141 sheared. Bolts either stripped or loosened from vibration. Walkers dropped through ceiling tiles onto refugees camped in the loge seats. Panic poured down aisles. Guards fired again. Muzzle flashes strobing green exit lights. Someone tossed a road flare that landed in a puddle of leaked diesel near the gator cart. Flame raced up fumes. Cart tank whoomphed, blast waves snapping tarp poles. Concourse tent fabric curled like parchment. Smoke avalanched into the lower bowl. Visibility maybe 20 feet. Strobing red strobes useless. I dragged 2 concussion patients through vomit, stepping over folding chairs, toward the tunnel that led under Columbus Drive. Smoke there clearer, vent fans still running. Halfway, we heard battering behind. Gurney bags opened, freight of dead spilling. Guards fell back, rounds punching bodies that didn't flinch. One infected grabbed a sergeant's shoulder. By the time muzzle aligned, teeth already deep. I saw Captain Harris drop his sidearm, rip open helmet strap, keel over. Couldn't tell if he'd inhaled smoke or given up. Civilians stampeded. A mother lost her grip on a little boy. He pinwheeled into a crush of boots, vanished like a coin through grate bars. I bit my lips so hard the taste of iron filled my mouth, but never said the word help. Nobody had bandwidth for prayers. We reached Service Tunnel Delta Gate, the one vendors used for beer kegs during football seasons that feel prehistoric now. Steel door stuck half open, warped by heat. I wedged a pry bar, shoved stretcher through sideways. Exited onto lakefront service road facing black water chopped by winter gusts. Walkers clogged main pedestrian ramp behind us, but stadium security left padlocked bicycles on a rack. I clipped chain with EMT shears, strapped a patient to top tube, and pedaled south along Harbor Breakwall. Wind off Lake Michigan scoured smoke stink from scrubs while the stadium behind pulsed orange. Sirens bled into distance until only waves slapped breakwater and walkers moaned 2 blocks inland. Makeshift clinic now runs out of a shuttered CTA maintenance depot near Cermak, Chinatown. We boil snowmelt, dress wounds with cut-up Bulls jerseys, and paint the phrase, "Orange tags mean hope" on plywood over the doors. Small lie worth the ink. Soldier Field still burns each night, turbines throwing sparks downwind. I pass by sometimes on supply runs. Watch silhouettes shuffle through the bowl like moths trapped in a lantern they can't fathom. Tell your listeners, big venues draw big promises, but concrete bowls become kettles when panic sets fire under the lid. Choose low ceilings, short hallways, doors that swing both ways. I didn't think much of the hurricane alert when it came across the FM band. Nobody did. We were 31 days into the outbreak. FEMA had stopped responding. The governor had gone silent. Every emergency frequency had either looped the same warning or fallen into static, but the wind kept coming. I was holed up in a decommissioned waste sorting facility about 3 miles inland from Pascagoula, Mississippi. Built in the 80s, steel frame, corrugated siding, old conveyor belts still rusted in place. I used to work sanitation in Mobile, ran route dispatch. I knew the old processing hubs, knew which ones had generators, tanks, tools, hidden corners. I wasn't alone. We had 7 people, a welder named Jules, 2 teenagers who came down from Hattiesburg, 1 ex-Navy cook, me and 2 others. We blocked the entrances with compacted bales of plastics and used old compactor panels as interior walls. We thought we were safe, but the storm hit harder than anything I'd ever seen. The hurricane didn't come slow, it slammed. Halloran was a Category 4 by the time it made landfall. Wind tore chunks off the roof. Metal screamed. Rain punched through the west siding like buckshot. And the infected came with it. They didn't walk in like in the videos. They flew. I'm not exaggerating. The wind lifted them. Bloated corpses, half skeletons wrapped in flesh and plastic tarps, up from nearby landfill mounds and tossed them through the air like garbage. I saw one smash through the north window in a whirl of limbs and rain. He bounced off the sorting belt, shattered his back on a pipe, and still tried to crawl. We fought all night with what we had. Wrenches, rebar, sharpened conduit. Jules took out 2 before he slipped on diesel runoff and cracked his head. The cook used hot fryer oil from our camping stove to blind one that had latched onto the younger girl's leg. The storm didn't stop. It howled, and with it came more dead. I watched them tumble in from the dark like sacks of meat with claws. Not walking, not moaning, just arriving. The wind pushed more than air. It pushed death through every crack in the walls. We sealed ourselves in the control room by midnight. It was elevated, thick glass windows, used to run the old magnetic sorters. But by then the whole building swayed. You could feel it in the floor, metal bending, the bones of the place giving up. At some point, I don't know when, I saw something I'll never forget. A walker, tangled in power lines outside, lit up by a bolt of lightning, flash of blue-white. Her eyes reflected it, still open, still glowing. Then she dropped, smoking, onto a pile of scrap plastic and never moved again. By morning, 5 of us were still alive. The kids were gone, Jules too. We left his body inside one of the conveyor hoppers and prayed the wind didn't carry him out again. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't the storm. It was the realization that nature doesn't care we're dying. It just keeps throwing us around like the rest of the garbage. I still live inland now, nowhere near power lines or dead fields or metal roofs. I dig pits, I sleep underground, and when the wind rises, I don't run. I bury myself and listen to the sky scream. It's the only warning we still get. I was flying out of a Vord when the order came down. We weren't told where we were going until we were already airborne. Coordinates were pushed to the HUD. target designated as Cormorant 9. The brief said, non-recoverable infected breach in urban sector. They said the area was no longer civilian, that the zone was compromised. It was Lyon. I had studied at the École in Lyon. My sister taught ballet in the 3rd arrondissement. We flew in low over the Rhône, 3 jets in formation. We were told it would be clean, fuel-air ordnance, maximum incineration, minimal secondary trauma. That was a lie. The moment we released payload, I saw movement on the balconies. Children, women, elderly holding towels over their faces. I could see the panic, the way they gestured, some waving, not at us to stop, just waving, like we were help. When the impact came, there was no scream, just silence, and then light. Buildings folding in on themselves, black water from ruptured mains. We were instructed not to return to Avourde. We diverted to Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. They wanted distance from domestic unrest. I didn't speak for 9 days. When I finally opened my mouth, it was to request reassignment. They gave me weather reconnaissance, said I was compromised. In the years since, I've heard stories from survivors in the south. Some say the bombs were mercy. Some say they made everything worse. But the one thing they all agree on, the fire didn't stop the virus. It only buried the truth. When the infection spread to Corsica, I didn't run. I landed my last flight in Ajaccio, unloaded what little gear we had left, and burned my commission papers. I live in the mountains now, alone. I keep a shortwave tuned to the old emergency band. Once, I heard a voice from Spain asking if the sky was safe again. I didn't answer. I don't know if I'll ever answer again. What we did in the sky, it may have been legal, but it was not right. When typhoons rolled up Bay of Bengal, we relayed warnings on HF and cranked siren towers. After virus came, sirens died for lack of diesel, but I kept radio lit using pedal gen, salvaged from abandoned rickshaw. On October 18th, I spun dial hunting Kolkata meteorological bulletin. Instead, found child's voice. Amu Baba Emni Kotai? Mama Papa, where are you? She repeated every 30 seconds. Signal S7, no fading. As if transmitter sat across reed bed, yet I knew every antenna within 5 leagues. I called back, asked her name. She replied, Rina. Age, 10. Location, Goro Goro Pani Chuche. Water running everywhere. I triangulated with handheld loop, bearing southwest toward Dumuria Charlands. Marsh there dotted with cyclone shelters on stilts. Maybe she hid in one. Next dawn, I poled skiff upriver hauling life jackets, biscuits, first aid. Static thick like wet cloth until midday, when her carrier flared full scale, though I'd moved only 2 kilometers. She said she saw big boats with people sleeping on deck. At 14 o'clock, I beached near an embankment breached by monsoon. Muddy prints, child-sized, led inland, then stopped where silt turned to mat of crushed hyacinth. Overhead, 2 crows perched silent, feathers ruffled. Air smelled wrong. Not carrion, not sewage. Ozone, the scent of old batteries. I pushed deeper among mangroves. Radio clipped to belt hissed, then cleared. Voice loud enough to vibrate casing. Apnikotai? Where are you? I answered out loud instead of keyed mic, and the jungle echoed my own words half a breath later. Parroted, maybe sunstroke. 20 paces on, water stirred. Something rose. Walker, female adult, hair matted with silt. She opened mouth. Instead of groan, perfect imitation of Rina's question issued in treble. Not playback. Vocal cords forced into child pitch. Consonants warped but intelligible. 2 more figures emerged. Male, their throats gurgling segments of earlier phrases. Water, sleeping, deck. Each syllable mismatched like fragments of radio checks. I backed until heel hit root, aimed machete. Thicker vegetation behind rustled. A line of infected advanced, jaws shut, voices leaking Rina's speech in staggered snippets, assembling sentences by committee. Sound seemed to anchor them. They marched with tide pulse rhythm toward the transmitter slung on my shoulder. I gunned motor. Small 2-stroke scavenged from trawler. Boat barely cleared bank before first walker splashed knee-deep. I carved wake through water hyacinth. Behind, Chorus of child's plea Dopplered across creeks. 10 minutes later, radio squelch snapped. Signal lost. Back at hut I cut carrier. Dismounted whip. Wrapped unit in foil mesh. Night humidity pressed so hard I felt sweat bead cold. At 21 o'clock hours, generator belt squealed. Voltage spike through pedals untouched. Speaker crackled. Please, I can't see you. Same child voice. This time pitched lower, as if throat too swollen for high register. I killed master switch. Voice faded but did not die. Continued faint through window shutters, borne on still air like distant loudspeaker. I hiked levee with flashlight shuttered, ears pricked. Walkers moved below, slosh of bare feet. Between sloshes, scraps of Rena's call, broken, learned, repeated. They searched not by sight but by broadcast echoes imprinted into ruined throats. Each corpse a speaker, network of wet transmitters hungry for response. By dawn I dragged gear onto roof, strung dipole to lightning rod, bricked PTT closed on dead carrier, a decoy beacon. Corpses gathered below like iron filings to magnet, heads tilted, mouths forming radio static too low to pass. While they milled, I lashed spare drums, built bamboo outriggers, loaded rice and medicine, and paddled north with tide. Behind me, hut roof swarm grew until weight bowed tin. At noon, first monsoon squall ripped dipole. Beacon died. Swarm drifted into mangrove, still mouthing words nobody answered. I transmit now from a watchtower near Pike Gutcher, 30 kilometers upriver, solar panel glued to rust bolts with tar. Range poor but ground safe for moment. Whenever scan stops on this frequency, I still hear faint carrier, no voice. Like paper once written then erased, but fibers remember. And my warning to all operators. Your callouts etch paths the dead can walk. Rotate frequencies, ballast transmitters you're ready to burn, and never teach parasites the sound of home. I used to believe that suffering had a reason, that death, even when cruel, was a kind of doorway. I told hundreds, thousands of grieving families that their child, their husband, their sister was in a better place. Then the dead got back up. When the infection hit Thunder Bay, we thought we were far enough north. We thought the cold would hold it off. The first case at St. Mary's was a tourist couple, American. His eyes had already clouded. She'd bitten a nurse in confusion. We locked down the cathedral. I offered sanctuary. We had heat, food, candles. I told them, this is holy ground. We are safe here. By the third day, the infection was inside. A boy we took in had hidden a wound. It wasn't from a walker. It was from his father. The father came back 2 nights later, dead and walking. I tried to bless him. That thing didn't flinch, didn't turn, just moved forward, mouth slack, arms rising. It wasn't some demon, not a vessel of sin. It was just rot and instinct. I waited for a sign, for the divine to intervene. The candles flickered. The pipe organ rattled from the storm wind outside. But no hand reached down from heaven. My flock scattered. Some died in the nave. One woman jumped from the bell tower. I found her hours later in the snow. Her body was whole, her eyes open, and I knew she'd expected salvation too. I left the church the next morning. No ceremony. I took a crowbar from the janitor's closet, broke the altar, and loaded what food was left into a toboggan. I kept the collar, not out of belief, out of habit. I now live beneath an abandoned rectory just off Red River Road. I keep no crosses, no scriptures, only a map and a list of names. I cross them off when I hear static where their voices used to be. Some nights I still pray, not out of faith, out of reflex, like scratching a wound long after the scab has sealed. I don't believe anymore, but I do remember what belief sounded like. And sometimes, on the shortwave, I still hear voices like mine, cracking, tired, but still speaking. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's the last lie I tell myself. Nobody cared what happened out here until we stopped producing. I was a supervisor on an oil field southeast of Williston, drilled back in shale, ran frac stages for 5 years. Even during the collapse we kept working. Not because anyone ordered it, because no one told us to stop. We thought fuel would mean food, protection, leverage. First cases hit town mid-July. Some guy came in from Dickinson coughing blood. By the end of the week, 5 roughnecks were sick. One bit the medic on site. When corporate pulled out and cut SATCOMs, we still drilled for another 6 days. Then the refinery west of town exploded. No warning. One long whistle, then glass and flame. Some said it was sabotage. Some said it was someone trying to kill the infected before they got into the tank farms. Doesn't matter. It lit up the plains like midday. We pulled back to a man camp just off Route 1804. 4 trailers, diesel jennies, buried lines. We reinforced it. Started stockpiling rifles from hunting stores. Ammunition was traded for water barrels. And somewhere along the line, we stopped calling each other crew. We became something else. I don't remember the first time someone tied up a looter, but I remember the day we executed a survivor who tried to run with 2 jerry cans. We hung him from a rig derrick and left him there for days. I was part of that. I let it happen. I ordered others to watch the roads. When families came with crying kids, we aimed rifles. When infected wandered close, we shot them, but we also burned the bodies of the living who touched them. On August 12th, someone tried to take the radio trailer. She'd been sending calls for help, against our orders. Aaron, they said, is letting this place rot. Aaron's people kill to stay warm. They weren't wrong. But what would you do when the snow doesn't melt? When your boots freeze overnight? When the propane runs out and the generators cough black smoke? You choose survival, even if it burns who you used to be. I still remember the name of the last man I killed. Elias. He was from Williston proper. Brought a convoy up thinking we had extra diesel. We didn't. So I led them into a ravine. We opened fire. That night, I dug through his coat and found pictures of his daughter, the kind taken in malls, with a pink plastic frame. I didn't sleep for 4 days after. When the infected came, I didn't run. I stayed in the drilling shack, radio on, just waiting. But the herd never came close. They passed around us, like they knew the real monsters were already inside. If you're hearing this, Williston doesn't exist anymore. Not really. The rigs still stand, but the men who ran them are bones under gravel. I'm the last one left. I broadcast on this rig's emergency beacon out of guilt, not hope. Don't come north. The land may be empty, but we ruined it worse than the dead ever could. I trimmed boxwood for bankers who measured hedge height with laser levels. Estates sat on a hillside west of Madrid Ring Road, walls of pale limestone higher than riot vehicles. When infection reports crept across Europe, the owner, Senor Arnau, invoked a contingency he'd drafted after the 2008 crisis. Retreat underground. Beneath tennis courts and olive groves sprawled a 2-level bunker, 80 centimeters of reinforced concrete, air scrubbers rated for chemical war, kitchen bigger than my apartment, 24 residents, family, bodyguards, 2 chefs, me, and maintenance staff. First month, bunker life felt like an overfunded team-building retreat. We played table tennis next to racks of freeze-dried paella, argued about La Liga results on battery-fed radio, even though the league had died. Outside, Madrid flickered nightly, transformers overloading as districts went dark block by block. Heat haze carried gunpowder tang. Westerly winds pushed it into air intakes, so filters smelled like fireworks. Trouble arrived behind a laundry cart. Housekeeper Elsa smuggled her 12-year-old daughter Lucia into the lower deck cold storage the day guards sealed the hatch. Girl had fever, no visible bites, claimed food poisoning. Elsa dosed her with antibiotics stolen from medbay. Fever broke. Lucia slept. Nobody told Arnau. Week 6. Supply review uncovered missing ration packs. Chefs demanded audit. Lucia discovered rummaging pantry. Alarm klaxon hammered corridors. Arnau's head of security, Sean, dragged girl to rec room floor while residents circled, eyes hard. Blood test kit gave ambiguous result. Quick strips unreliable. Arnau decreed surface exile at dawn for both mother and child. Generosity, he said. Better than bullet. I spent night rerouting CCTV so cold storage corridor looped old footage. helped Elsa sneak vitamins, blankets, a transistor radio into a supply lift. At first, light hatch cranked open. Guards shoved them out, tossed bags after, spun wheel shut. Arnau logged the event. Contamination risk mitigated. 2 nights later, security cams, ones I didn't tamper, caught motion near greenhouse skylight. Shape of a girl, limbs twitching, dragging a larger figure. Arnau's wife screamed when feed cut. Sean killed monitors to avoid panic. Orders, full lockdown, internal patrols. I volunteered upper hallway rounds. Nobody notices Gardner with pry bar. Walking corridor near server stack, I heard soft thuds, like someone knocking rhythm without knuckles. Lucia stood at plexiglass inspection window, eyes milk-fogged, head tilting rapid as a wind vane. Elsa sprawled beside, throat chewed, tendons gleaming. Lucia's teeth scraped plexi with sound like chalkboard shriek. No alarm tripped. The inspection port wasn't on motion grid. I knew hatch integrity. Outer bulkhead stainless, inner aluminum honeycomb. Enough kicks could buckle latchdogs. I considered running to call security. Instead, I pulled battery fuses from hallway emergency lights. Darkness swallowed window. Thuds paused. Walkers dislike blind corners. I retreated, told no one. 3 hours later, Arnau gathered residents in dining hall. Abnormal pressure readings at main door. Something ramming from outside. Guards took firing positions behind overturned marble buffet. By my count, ammo supply. 40 rounds per rifle, 3 grenades. Hatch hinges glowed red on thermal cam. Not from cutting torch, but friction. Whatever pushed, did so steady, patient, immune to fatigue. Hatch buckled inward. Steel dog pins snapped in sequence. Pop, pop, pop. Lucia slipped through first, jaw working chew reflex. Guards hesitated, looked too much like a child. She closed gap, bit Sean's trigger hand. Shot went wild, ricocheted off ventilation duct. Other infected spilled through. Groundskeeper Ramon, 2 security who'd patrolled perimeter days earlier, faces torn. Coriolis of fear turned rifles into clubs, ammo counts forgotten. I grabbed Arnau's shoulder, shouted route to emergency egress, service tunnel disguised as irrigation conduit opening into Olive Grove. He froze, eyes locked on wife pinned beneath buffet by fallen guard. Walker gnawed at Buff's calf. Arnau sobbed but didn't step forward. I left him. Conscience weighs less in running shoes. Tunnel door jammed on mud. Recent rains swelled soil. I wedged spade, pried, slipped through slit narrow as mailbox. Behind me screams rose, then muffled, like someone throttled nightlife DJ. I crawled 30 meters, surfaced among olive trunks silvered by moon. Estate floodlights flickered, then died. Power grid failing as breakers tripped. I sheltered 3 days in tool shed downslope, rationing prunes, water from cistern. Saw smoke vent from gazebo where exhaust ducts exit. Fire below deck took air scrubbers first. No survivors walked out. Some nights, however, Lucia's silhouette wandered perimeter fence, shoulders ticking side to side, nose sniffing at creosote rails. Now I set up camp in half-collapsed nursery greenhouse. Glass missing, but frames hold my tarp. Radio built from spare irrigation solenoids. 9-volt stash from gate sensors. Dipole strung between cypress poles. Battery starves quick. I transmit at dusk when crickets mask static. If your listeners measure safety by wall thickness, remind them walls trap fear same way, until one crack lets it breathe. I don't usually broadcast. Got no reason to share. Never been a teacher. Never wanted to be a leader. But if you're hearing this, if you're still alive, and still you, maybe my story will keep it that way. Maybe it'll teach you something useful, or maybe it'll just remind you not everyone who smiles is your friend. My name's Silas Trent. I'm 42 years old, born outside Asheville, raised on dry cereal, AM radio, and diesel fumes. Before the world fell in on itself, I made my living rewiring hardline systems for off-grid clients. Communications, power, filtration, anything you'd need to keep the outside out. I was the guy they called when they wanted to disappear. I worked quiet, paid in cash, didn't ask questions. I was good at what I did, and that made me a problem when the cities started coughing up their dead. At first, the collapse didn't look like much from where I was standing. The main roads went quiet, the phones stopped ringing, and the price of water filters jumped tenfold. I didn't panic. I just stocked up on butane, vacuum-sealed everything I could, and packed my rig with copper spools, a chainsaw, and 3 weeks of food. I figured I'd ride it out alone. Didn't work out that way. About a month after the first major city blackout, Memphis, I think, I was running along back roads near the Tennessee-Mississippi line, staying off the main highways. That's when I saw them, a family, or at least what looked like one. 2 women, a kid, and a man waving me down in front of a 2-story house with a sheet-painted safe zone flapping off the porch. I hesitated, but they had chickens in the yard, smoke rising from a chimney, and their dog didn't bark like it had been trained. That's what made me stop. A trained dog meant planning. Planning meant intelligence. They offered me cornbread and sweet tea, told me they'd turned the old farm into a haven, said they had a few others passing through, mostly travelers, and just needed a little help keeping the solar setup running. I told them what I could do, and they smiled. The second night, I didn't wake up. The third morning, I did, tied by my wrists to a support beam in a dirt floor cellar, stripped down to my thermal base layer, dehydrated, and dizzy from whatever they'd laced the tea with. One of them came down and told me not to panic, said I wasn't a prisoner, just useful property, said I'd be kept alive and fed so long as I kept their systems running. I spent 17 days down there. 17. They ran the place like a twisted farm, rotters in chain-link pens out back, like livestock, kept hungry, controlled with cattle prods and sticks soaked in pig blood to distract them during feeding. I learned later they weren't killing walkers, they were breeding proximity. They wanted a buffer of infected to keep strangers away, but not so many it became unsafe. They called it rotter ranching. They were proud of it. They had 4 other people in the barn, all like me, skilled in something. One was a welder, another had been a nurse. We didn't talk much, they made sure of that. Always one of the ranchers watching. Always someone reminding us we were useful meat. I stayed quiet, observed everything, watched the way they moved around the pens, noticed which gates stuck when the humidity got high, marked who carried what key, who cleaned the carburetor on the backup generator. I wasn't praying for rescue, I was counting minutes, looking for seams. The break came on a stormy evening. One of them, the older man, Tom they called him, left a bundle of wire unattended while clearing out a generator shed. I used a sliver of copper to pick my wrist knots loose in the dark. Took 3 hours. Blood ran down my forearm, but I didn't feel it. Pain's useful when it reminds you what you are. I didn't run. I went to the pen. The infected inside was a woman, maybe late 40s, her jaw long gone, but her arms strong enough. I lured her to the gate, pulled her forward, then shoved a broken rake handle through the lock catch. She couldn't get out, but she'd look like she was out. I set the fire first, doused the outside walls in ethanol siphoned from their own ATV. Then I screamed like I was being eaten. They came running, all of them. They saw the infected first, not the fire starting behind them, not me standing in the hayloft. I cut the main support as the fire spread, let the upper floor collapse with all of them inside. The infected woman got out, bit one of the men before I dropped a shovel across her back. But it was already too late. When the smoke cleared, the barn was gone. The pens too. I left no one behind. Not the others, not the captors, not the useful meat. I stood at the edge of the field while the fire cracked and screamed. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. I just watched. I'm still watching. I live now in the watchtower I built with what was left. HVAC tubing, rebar, scavenged solar sheets, and an antenna I tuned by hand. I don't answer hails. I don't rescue. But I transmit this so you know. The trap wasn't the ropes. It wasn't the pens. The trap was believing they were something close to human. The trap was the smile. This is Silas Trent. If you see a place that looks too clean, too calm, too well fed, burn it before it burns you. Because in this world, the worst monsters wear denim and wave you in with a grin. This is Emily. I don't know if anyone's out there. I don't know if this works. I just found it. This old radio set in a waterlogged garage behind what used to be a mechanic's shop. I dried the inside with old clothes and a rag soaked in lighter fluid. It smelled like fire and rubber when I powered it up. I don't know the range, but if you're hearing this, I'm 16. I've been on my own for the last 2 years. Before that, it was me and my dad. Before that, well, my mum didn't make it out of the first week. She turned. We didn't know what the infection really did back then. We thought it was just a bad fever, maybe something like rabies, but quiet. She stopped eating, slept half the day. Then one morning, she was already standing when I came downstairs. Her eyes were not hers. Her fingers were red, like she'd tried to dig something out of her skin. Dad held her back and told me to go upstairs. I didn't go. I saw it. Everything. He didn't shoot her. Not then. He tied her down with rope from the garage. He really thought he could save her. But 3 hours later, she broke her jaw trying to bite through the cloth in her mouth. And he knew. He took her out back. It was quiet. I heard one shot. That's when I knew how bad it was going to get. We stayed put for a while, boarded the windows, rationed out canned peaches and beans. I wasn't allowed outside for months, just sat near the attic vent and looked at the driveway, trying to memorize every crack in the concrete like it meant something. We didn't talk about Mum. We didn't say her name. Eventually the food started running out, and the walkers, well, we call them the rotten, started lingering longer, like they remembered something about our street but couldn't place it. Dad and I moved around a lot after that. Small towns, empty farms. He found an old box of surgical masks and made me wear them anytime we crossed through buildings. Not for the infection. We already knew it didn't spread through air, but for the smell. He said you should never get used to the smell of death. Once you do, you forget what clean smells like. And if you forget that, you're not human anymore. He taught me how to shoot a bow, but it was heavy, too big for my arms. So I learned something better, a slingshot. Not the plastic kind you get at a toy store, but the one we made from a Y branch and black surgical tubing we found in a junked-out vet clinic. I use steel ball bearings or thick nuts. Sometimes I can knock a rotten down in one hit if the skull's soft enough. But not always. Some of them have been out in the weather too long, skulls dried and hardened. Those ones, it's better to let them pass. I got good. I can hit a hanging can from 30 feet with a crosswind. I can knock out a window without making a sound. And I always collect my ammo. Steel is hard to find now. I've lost too many bearings in tall grass. My dad, he lasted longer than I thought he would. He didn't die from the infection. He died fighting. 3 men broke into the cabin we were sleeping in one night just outside of Springfield. They didn't shout, didn't even ask for supplies. Just came in through the window and tried to take what they wanted. I think they thought we were asleep, but my dad never slept more than a few hours. He heard them, took down 2 before they even raised a weapon. The 3rd stabbed him in the side. I grabbed the slingshot, hit the guy in the jaw, and then ran. I kept running until the trees started to blur. When I came back in the morning, my dad was already gone. The 3rd man too. Only blood left. Since then, it's been just me. I sleep up high, in tree houses, grain silos, whatever I can find. I carry everything I own in a military duffel and a belt pouch. I avoid roads, walk rail lines. I know where every water pump, broken vending machine and working door hinge is between here and Carbondale. I don't shoot unless I have to. The rotten can't climb well, but some of them are faster than they used to be. I've seen it. Not running. Just less broken. I'm not scared of them, though. Not anymore. I know what they are. I know what they do. What scares me now is the quiet. The kind that lasts too long. The kind where you wonder if you're the only one left. I think about that sometimes. What if everyone else is dead, and I just didn't get the message? But then, I find a footprint in the mud, or a door left ajar with warm ash in the fireplace. Someone else was here. Maybe yesterday, maybe an hour ago. Sometimes I leave notes. I write in charcoal on walls. I was here. Name's Emily. I don't want trouble. I'm just trying to live. I don't know if anyone reads them, but it helps. I don't cry much anymore. I don't talk much either, not even to myself. I've got a cassette player, but no tapes. Just use it for the rewind click. It's rhythmic, keeps my thoughts paced. I tried talking to a mirror once. It felt like talking to someone else. That helped for a day. I'm not broken, not yet. But I'm different. I don't dream about malls, or school dances, or summer breaks. I dream about a place with concrete walls and no doors, where I can rest, where I can sleep for days without listening for footsteps in gravel. A place where the rotten can't smell me, and where the wind doesn't carry the sound of chain-link fences rattling. I know I'm not supposed to be alive. Kids my age didn't make it far after things went bad. But I did. And I'm not just alive. I'm good at it now. I'm careful. I don't freeze when I see them. I don't panic when I hear gunshots. I just breathe slower and keep moving. I know how long it takes to boil pond water before it's drinkable. I know how to tell if a rotten is fresh by the smell of their breath. I know that if the birds stop chirping, something's near. I know that humans are often worse than the infected, and I know that if I stop moving, I stop being me. So, I keep walking, keep collecting bearings, keep listening. If you're hearing this, and you've survived this long too, maybe you get it. Maybe you know what it means to stop being scared and start being something else. I don't know what that word is yet, but I'm still here. Emily, 16, alive. Moving north, maybe toward Iowa, maybe not. If you see a message carved into an old silo door that says, "Keep walking quietly," that was me. Good luck out there. Station K-14 sits 50 nautical miles inland from Kangerlussuaq and 8,000 feet above the Atlantic. It was built for aerosol sampling, not siege living. A one-story fiberglass tube on stilts, 3 labs, a diesel hut, and a plywood weather porch painted the color of old aspirin. Supply flights landed every 42 days until the last Basler crew saw Reykjavik in flames and turned back. First infection we heard came by HF relay from Thule Air Base. A cargo loader mauled on the ramp. Crew locked themselves in the radome. We logged the incident, assumed isolation would spare us. Wrong. Day 11. After that call, a twin otter out of Akureyri dropped 2 emergency pallets, canned goods, fuel drums, and a mechanic named Oscar, whose manifest claimed frostbite patient. He shivered under an expedition parka, insisted he just needed warmth. We carried him inside, stripped mitts, and found 4 teeth marks on the wrist already rimed black. Diesel stove kept the core module at 46 Fahrenheit, warm enough that whatever slept in his blood woke before midnight. I was on data watch when Oscar coughed behind me, a dry bark blown through cracked lips. He lurched, knocked over the nephalometer, reached with hands twitching like compass needles fighting polar convergence. I slammed the lab door, hit the quick freeze protocol, vent outside air, cut heat, kill lights. Temperature dropped below 0 in 7 minutes. Oscar slowed, movements thick like engine oil in January, then froze mid-stride, eyelids half closed. That proved the rule. At -15 Celsius the infected stiffen. At -30 they're statues. Trouble is, sunrise here brings radiant heat even in March. When interior crept above 0 the next day, Oscar's pupils drifted again. We dragged him outside, chained ankles to a bamboo snow probe, and let the katabatic wind finish what altitude began, body iced solid. We left him landmarking the fuel cache. Station roster, myself, Dr. Liang atmospheric physicist, Håkon generator tech, Eva medic, Anders cook and general, 5 survivors. We adopted a rhythm nights with diesel off, wrapped in aerogel quilts, daylight shift firing the stove just long enough to melt snow for water and keep instruments from shattering. Outside, temperature oscillated like a bad heartbeat. Freeze, thaw, freeze. Each thaw risked Oscar walking again. On April 1st, the barometer crashed. Pit-low cyclone. Wind drove spindrift that sand-blasted station skin raw. Visibility 6 feet. Inside, condensation ghosts bloomed on every bolt. Generator gulps air. Storm choked the intake. At 2200 hours, diesel coughed dead. We had 3 minutes before secondary batteries dipped below radio threshold. Liang climbed the intake ladder in whiteout, found a figure blocking the vent grill. Oscar, chain severed, wind-polished ice crust where skin once sagged, Gloves too thick to wield the hatchet, Liang kicked the statue until brittle ankles snapped and wind toppled it. He never spoke of the sound brittle bones made against aluminium siding. We relit the stove next day. Heat licked vent walls, melted stray ice. Water sizzled. An odor like wet dog, and sour milk crawled corridors. Oscar thawing somewhere in the drift, too risky to search. We agreed. Any warm day we stay sealed, trust the freezer drop at dusk. 2 weeks of that and nerves frayed thin, eyelids twitched to phantom knocks. April 7th. LiDAR array failed, iced bearings. Maintenance meant climbing mast. Håkon volunteered. We belayed him with static rope anchored inside the hatch. He reached the array, chipped glaze, radioed all clear. On descent the rope slackened, then jerked. I hauled. No weight. Through the swirl I glimpsed Håkon sliding down slope. One ankle clamped by Oscar, whose legs shattered with each yard yet still flexed upward. Rope useless. Shotgun lived in comms locker, but wind devoured screams faster than I fetched it. When spindrift settled, 2 shapes lay half buried, one in red overalls, one in shredded flight suit. Neither moved. We left them to the fern. Snow is forgiving witness. Station power now balanced on 2 drums of Arctic diesel and a kite turbine Liang built from skis and mylar blankets. Nights we shiver, days we hunch over data tables we no longer transmit because nobody asks. Yet every dusk I key this transceiver, 20 watts upper sideband, and log coordinates in case some ranger still patrols Sondrastrom. Advise listeners bound for polar refuge. Cold is ally only until you crave warmth, and warmth is the hinge on which statues learn to walk. We thought it would be like a mass casualty event, like a big train wreck, or that refinery blast in Tulsa. You stabilize, triage, move people, repeat. My brother Lucas and I were paramedics for Sarpy County. I rode shotgun. He handled meds, pressure dressings, airway checks. He was better at it than me. We didn't run when the alert started. We moved the ambulance off-grid, stored it at a decommissioned fire station near Gretna. Solar panels, lockbox medicals, fuel cache. We weren't preppers. We were planners. The infected came in waves, slow but inevitable. We learned how to hear them before we saw them, low wet dragging, like mop buckets on tile. But the people were worse. In the 3rd week, we pulled a man from a flipped Civic. He was bleeding from his arm, but the wound was clean. No bite, just glass. He begged us not to leave him behind. Lucas stabilized him. We took him to a safe house we'd patched together with other first responders. The man slept, ate, laughed, said his name was Corey. 2 nights later, I woke to find the med box open. Corey was gone. The fentanyl, lidocaine, and 3 trauma kits. Gone. Lucas didn't chase him. He just sat. Didn't say anything. Just turned the tourniquet in his hands. A week later, someone shot Lucas through the chest. We were treating a small family. Their daughter had a crushed foot. We had morphine. I saw the man's eyes when I unwrapped it. He waited until my brother turned to wash his hands. 1 clean shot. 308 round. Not from far. He took the drugs and left his daughter behind. She never screamed. She just stared. I don't think she knew what happened. I buried Lucas by the Platte River, under a collapsed billboard, used a CPR board for a headstone. I carved 1 word into it. Tried. I still use the ambulance, but I stripped the markings. No more sirens. No more promise. Just steel and gas and painkillers I never share. I keep moving. I patch wounds where I can, but I never show the full bag. I don't sleep inside shelters. I don't trust volunteers. You save people for long enough and you realize some don't want saving. They want taking. And when the drugs run out, they'll take blood instead. I broadcast from the catwalk of an abandoned elevated water tower 3 miles north of Goshen, Alabama, painted Home of the Eagles. Once, now rust streaks the letters until they read Choe-Fegus. Tower legs triangulate a patch of loblolly pines, and the tank shell makes nice Faraday shielding when storms roll in. I was mid-sermon on the local 96.7 megahertz the night Birmingham fell. Topic, gnawing sin. Irony, I know. Studio phone lit when first caller claimed downtown walkers chewed a policeman outside Lynn Park. I cut to commercial, told engineer to vet prank. He never came back. Only clatter echoing stairwell. I locked booth, watched skyline flicker while car horns below merged into a single hoarse throat. Signal stayed live until grid brownout slid needles to 0. I drove south on US 231, Bible and condenser mic riding shotgun. Half-mile past Troy, the world narrowed to brake lights and firefly embers. Taillights of cars already abandoned. I ditched pickup, hiked section roads, reached this water tower by dawn. Saw virtue in height. No stairs for dead to shuffle. No fences to gate. Just ladder rungs cut short 10 feet up. Old prank by town teens. Salvation for me. First week alone. Ate shelf-stable communion wafers. Drank rainwater caught in paint buckets. Second week strangers arrived. Families from Mobile running ahead of coastal outbreaks. They built pallet huts beneath the pines, strung tarps. I climbed down mornings, read scripture, hammered nails. Infected drifted rural roads slow as cotton rot. We posted sentries with 22 rifles. Easy enough. Then, Sister Angela Blair suggested infection was the second washing. Flesh shed so spirit might rise unstained. She'd been nurse's aide, could dress bites. She could also quote Revelation with tornado warning cadence. Her tent filled each night. Folks knelt, asked if salvation meant surrender. I preached hold fast, cure may bloom. She preached trust, the valley of dry bones. Fault line split midday when a drifter stumbled from the tree line, shirt shredded, shoulder ripped to clavicle. He begged water. I fetched canteen. Angela blocked me, said let him drink grace instead. She pressed palm to his wound. He sighed relief. Crowd murmured hallelujahs. She leaned close. He bit her cheek. Sentries raised rifles. Crowd shouted sign. Rifles lowered. Angela staggered, blood shining like syrup. She didn't cry. She raised arms, flaunted biter's wedding band to glory. Some knelt, offered wrists. I shouted we'd seal them in the storage shed until fever passed. They laughed, said locks are for fear. 7 walked into the clearing, linked hands with Angela, sang, I'll fly away. Bitten first, boy named Caleb Norton, 17. Track team legs that never kept him from trouble. He didn't scream when teeth found him. He smiled like a child finally tall enough for the ride. Night fell, campfires glowed. Bitten ones swayed round flames, humming discordant gospel while fever cooked marrow. Sentries turned their backs, said holiness outranks bullets. I climbed tower, pulled ladder rope tight, watched moon silver their faces. Fever eyes glazed, limbs twitched, him never faltered, just slipped into wet gargle. At dawn 9 bodies stood hollowed of will, jaws working slow. Rest of camp-lined path, palms up, necks offered. I snatched rifle, chambered round, shouted warning, gave sermon shorter than any I'd preached. Grace's choice ends when teeth meet skin. Shot Caleb first, quick. Others froze, confusion clouding devotion. Second shot took Angela through temple. Hymn broke like wineglass dropped. Crowd scattered. Some wept, some cursed. Walkers shuffled forward anyway. I fired until magazine bashed back on empty. Smoke drifted pasture. Sun rose red behind pines, and camp smelled like burned pork. Survivors fled, maybe found other towers. I stayed. Guilt sits lighter aloft. Each night I pedal generator, key mic, read psalms over upper sideband, because FM needs repeaters now silent. I add commentary. Plague no parable, just rot wearing old clothes. Yet some evenings, barely above noise floor, voices call, Good Shepherd, lead us. I do not answer. I've learned shepherds sometimes march flocks straight off cliffs. If your listeners find themselves under charismatic canvas, remind them scripture without skeptical ears becomes kindling, and kindling feeds pyres that light the dead all too well. They say bikers don't cry. Guess they never got bit. If you're reading this, then I didn't make it through the night. That's all right. I'm not asking for a rescue, not asking for prayers. Just figured someone ought to know the kind of man I was before the fever takes hold and I forget. Name's Dale Rawlins. Born 68, Elko, Nevada. Drove a rig until my back gave out. Found freedom again on 2 wheels. Rode half the country with a patched crew called Dust Spoke Brotherhood. We weren't saints, but we kept the code. Never leave a brother behind. Share your tools, and ride like hell. We were heading west when everything went bad. First case I saw was a man on the shoulder near Wendover. Looked like a heat stroke, but when my buddy Reese checked on him, the guy latched on like a dog in a meat house. Took a chunk from Reese's neck. We shot the infected man, Reese too, after he turned. Never even hesitated. It was clean, cold, like flipping a breaker. That was September. We kept riding west, dodging cities, sleeping under overpasses. Stopped trusting radios. Never stayed in one spot more than a night. Didn't matter. The dead walked slower than us, but they always came. I got bit 3 days ago. Wasn't brave. Wasn't stupid. Just tired. Took a spill off my bike crossing loose salt. One of them grabbed me from the dust. I kicked his teeth in, but not before he tore a piece from my thigh. I patched it. Lied to my last crew. Told them it was barbed wire. Let them roll on without me the next morning. I didn't want to turn near them. Didn't want my last act to be ripping out someone's throat. So I'm here. Bonneville. Flatlands of silence. I parked facing the sunrise. Watched the salt light up like powdered gold. It was the closest thing to peace I've felt in weeks. I'm gonna put this journal under the seat. I've got one more ride left in me. Maybe half a mile before the fever really hits. After that, the only thing moving will be my bones under the sun. But listen, if you're out there, still breathing, still human, don't let this world steal what made you. You. We all lose people. Some of us lose ourselves too. Just make sure it's for a damn good reason. Tell my crew I kept the code. Tell 'em Dale rode clean to the end. They locked us in with biometric access and panic codes. Top 50 floors of Jumeirah Business Tower 2, a glass coffin with views of the Gulf and 1,000 corpses clogging Sheikh Zayed Road. At first, we thought we were secure. We had purified air, smart elevators, solar backups, a water reclamation unit, and digital supply chain notifications. We were not secure. We were trapped with men who'd never been told no. The clients, VIPs, bankers, a few ministry officials, thought money still mattered. When the first walker made it into the sub-garage, the armored doors sealed. Corporate policy. But someone was still infected. Took 5 days to turn. She bit a telecom manager in the stairwell, who bit the chef. By the 7th day, 6 were gone, and 26 were armed. I was head of Team Saffron, a 6-woman executive security group trained in live threat removal. Our job became containment. But once the first body hit the floor, power shifted. CEOs asked us to restore order. I didn't. I took order. The tower became a fiefdom. Floor 48 held weapons. Floor 49 had food. Floor 50 was mine. I chose who moved between them. They called me Queen Noura, but not to my face. To me, they said ma'am. Even the men who once dictated oil contracts. You ask how I held it? Simple. Fear and stories. I lit the infected on fire and pushed them off the balconies. I used the elevator PA to pipe their screams into every floor. Anyone who broke curfew woke up zip-tied to the east-facing glass, silhouette visible to the infected 300 feet below. They clawed at the tower all night. By dawn, most volunteers begged for my rules. The hardest part wasn't the monsters. It was the memories. The young guard who asked me if we'd go to prison if the world came back. The floor technician who still wore cologne. The way some people kept asking for their office Wi-Fi to be restored, as if email would save them. Last summer, a second tower signaled with mirror flashes. Survivors. We debated linking with them, opening sky bridges, merging supply chains. Then, a drone flew from their rooftop and dropped a message. Do not open, we are not who we were. Next day, they burned the bridge. No one left their tower. I respected that. I broadcast this now from floor 50, station Z1, on the emergency antenna that once relayed sports scores to Sheikh Hamdan's yacht. I've encrypted it so only towers with the same firmware can hear. If you're one of them, know this. We are sovereign. We need nothing. But we are watching. If you want alliance, bring water, silence, and submission. No banners. No gods. No kings, but who holds the stairwell? You don't smell it until you've passed the old water towers, just west of TEMELIN. The road starts to dip, and the smell gets in your teeth. Like melted plastic, hot rust. Every breath makes you think of a car battery left too long in the sun. That's how you know you're getting close to what's left of the TEMELIN nuclear power station. My name's Pavel Marek, 39. Before all this, I ran cable and did signal relay maintenance for CEZ, the Czech utility company that used to run the plant. I was a contractor, never part of the core crew, just the guy they called when a junction box failed or some antenna needed welding before snow season. When the outbreak started last year, I kept working. Government broadcast told everyone to stay in controlled zones. TEMELIN was one of them. We thought the plant would hold. We thought it would be guarded, supported, maybe even turned into a central hub for civilian sheltering. We were wrong. When the military pulled out, they didn't tell anyone. No notice, no announcement. One morning, all the personnel were gone. Gates open, barracks stripped, main diesel pumps shut off. They left behind the infected that had already made it inside the perimeter. The only reason I wasn't dead on day one was because I was already up in a maintenance tower a kilometer out, checking a repeater dish. From there, I saw the first plume. Just a white hiss in the distance at first. No boom, just pressure. The main containment building didn't explode like in movies. It ruptured. The backup water injection system had already failed. That reactor was an old design. Not the worst, but not forgiving when left to dry boil. The pressure built, the fuel warped. Superheated steam forced its way out through weak points in the structure and carried something worse than fire. Vaporized core particles and contaminated coolant. That was 2 months ago. I'm still here. The walkers near TEMELIN don't behave differently, not in the way most people think. They don't run or climb or scream or plan, but they are harder. They rot slower. Some of them, especially the ones exposed during the breach, have skin like waxed leather. Their joints are cracked but still move with eerie smoothness. I hit one 3 times in the skull with a rebar hook and it barely staggered. When it did fall, it didn't twitch like most do. It just stopped, eyes still open, liquid dripping from the corners. I burned that one. I burn all of them now. Something about radiation exposure near the explosion didn't just kill organic bacteria, it preserved flesh unnaturally. You don't smell these things coming. That's the worst part. Regular infected stink of decay. These, the TEMELIN rotters, don't reek. They don't make sound unless provoked. And their clothes, they're half melted, fused into their skin, like they walked through a blast furnace and just kept walking. Most people won't come near this zone. Smart people. But scavengers sometimes pass through. You can tell the experienced ones by their silence. No gunfire, just bludgeoning tools and quiet boots. No one wants to risk tearing a suit, a scratch from one of these things. It's not just infection anymore. It's radiation, blood poisoning, maybe even chemical burns if you're downwind of an old leak site. I live now in an old concrete switching station buried just southeast of the plant. The walls are lined with lead sheeting. It used to be a sealed transmission node before everything fell apart. There's still an antenna on the roof, reinforced with scavenged struts. I patched it into a hand-powered broadcast kit salvaged from an emergency alert van near České Budějovice. It still works, as long as I crank it daily. I broadcast because I don't want anyone else thinking this place is safe. I've heard the rumors, people saying the red zones are clear now, that the nuked areas burn the infection out, that you can hide from the hordes there. That's suicide. It didn't burn out the virus. It trapped it and altered it. Not in a lab, not in some horror movie way, just through time, radiation, heat, and isolation. These infected, these husks, they've become something else. Not smarter, not faster, just harder to kill, harder to detect. I've seen 3 emerge silently from behind scorched train cars. I watched one walk straight through a flooded turbine hall with a steel rod driven through its chest. They're not immortal, but they're not breaking down like the others. I keep a tally scratched into the wall. So far, 32 kills in 41 days, all inside the blast radius. I haven't gone beyond the inner perimeter since last month, when the rains came and washed new corpses down from the hillside grave pits. Sometimes I hear noises in the reactor shell at night. Not infected, not machines, just metal creaking. Something inside the collapsed hall groaning as if the structure still remembers what it was. Or maybe it's just thermal shifts from a cracked fuel pool. I don't investigate. I sleep with a filter mask and keep my eyes toward the door. I'm not immune to the radiation. I feel it in my gums. I get nosebleeds every third morning. My skin burns in patches. But I'm still cleaner than the air above TEMELIN. If you're listening, and you've thought about heading into a red zone, hoping for shelter or freedom or space, don't. The walkers here don't chase. They wait. And they last longer than we do. This is Pavel Marek, final station operator south of TEMELIN. If this is my last message, don't mourn me. Just stay away from the glow. This is Colonel Mikhail Petrovich Orlov, speaking to all surviving listeners within range of this signal. I served the 106th Guards Airborne Division. I was logistics. I don't speak in metaphors. I speak in facts. So here's one for the record. We outlasted the world. Not because we were righteous. Not because we were lucky. Because we were disciplined. Because we didn't break when everything else did. Krasny Yar was a grain silo, a fuel dump, and a train repair depot. That's all it was. Just another line on the old supply maps. But it had what others didn't. Depth. Old bunkers. Narrow valleys. Forests that turned to bog in the spring. Easy to defend. Easier to seal off. When the sickness came, when the streets in Kaluga went black, we held the line. We burned roads, collapsed bridges, shot anyone who tried to breach the quarantine zone after the first breach. I still remember the smell of it. Burned meat, rot, and machine oil. For months, it clung to everything. We pulled back, took in 43 civilians who followed orders. Engineers, mechanics, 3 nurses, no politicians. We didn't have room for speeches. That was 4 winters ago. Now we are Krasny Yar, but not the Krasny Yar of the old maps. This one is newer, harder, built from ferroconcrete and discipline. We cleared out the dead, block by block, rewired the hydro station with salvaged transformers, reinforced the old Soviet diesel generators with handmade ceramic capacitors. When a part failed, we melted metal and shaped a new one. The forge stays lit, day and night. We have food, we have water. We grow barley and squash in heated trench gardens under sheets of salvaged glass and UV lamps. We distill ethanol for engines and trade. We hold drills weekly. No one touches a weapon unless they clean it daily. We have 71 people alive today. The youngest is 8, the oldest 62. No religion, no politics, just work and quiet. And yet, I've kept this transmitter sealed for 3 years. Until now. Because 3 days ago, we saw new fires on the eastern ridgeline. Not raiders, not storms, torches, lanterns, columns of people, organized, moving like trained legs, not starving ones. No screams, no panic, just slow, methodical movement southbound along the frost line. That means something has changed. Somewhere beyond the tree line, someone is organizing again. So this is not a warning. This is a call. If you are disciplined, come. If you are infected, do not come. If you are armed but willing to work, come. If you are hungry but honest, come. We will test you. We will scan your vitals. We will isolate you for 8 days before you enter our gates. If you refuse these terms, turn back. If you breach our perimeter without permission, you will be treated as infected and neutralized without warning. But if you follow our protocols and bring value, you will be fed, sheltered, given tools. You will be part of the next chapter of civilization, not its ashes. I know what we were. I've read the old news feeds. The world saw Russia as a collapsing machine, a bear bleeding out in its own cage. That may have been true. But what the rest of you didn't understand is that we were always ready to rebuild from the ruins. Discipline, order, hard hands, hard minds. That is what it takes. That is what survives. You will not find democracy here. You will not find councils and round tables. But you will find safety. You will find power running at night and a clean cot to sleep in. This is Colonel Orlov, keeper of Krasny Yar. Signal repeats every 8 minutes. Coordinates encoded in the subcarrier. Don't bring maps. They're outdated. Bring fuel. Bring wool. Bring spare circuit boards. Bring anything that can be repurposed or reforged. Leave behind ideology. It has no root here. Winter has teeth. The rot still walks. But man is not done yet. We will build something from the frost. One brick, one rule, one survivor at a time. This is Arpad Kelemen, registered forestry tracker from Bihor County, Romania. If anyone's still using the Black River Loop, this is for you. I'm broadcasting from the relay above Lake Belis, still running 2 12-volt AGM batteries and 1 solar blanket. Not that the sun's been out for 3 days. The uplink still works. The cables hiss, but the modulation's clean. Before I start, let me be clear. I'm not calling for help. I don't need ammo, and I don't need meds. What I need is for someone to listen carefully and tell me if they've seen anything like what I just saw. I've lived in these woods since year 1. 6 years of hard frost, copper snow, rot in the rivers, and quiet walking things that used to be men. I've made peace with what we have to do now. I've taken down ferals. I've shot raiders who thought fur and meat meant I had more to give. I've traded dry fish and dogwormer for ammunition and engine grease. I've never asked for much, and I've never broken the neutral zone truce. But this was different. 3 nights ago, just past the 4th ridge beyond the old ski lift, I saw what I thought was a wounded bear. Big male, coat hanging off in strips, loping on 3 legs. I heard it before I saw it. Branches cracking like they'd been bent instead of broken. No breath sounds, no snort, just a strange shuffle, slow but heavy, with a dragging sound behind it. I watched from 50 meters. Its left side was gone. Not bloodied, not gored. Gone. Ribs out like rusted rebar. Maggots moving like frost under the fur. One eye dry in its socket, not blinking. It walked like it didn't feel the terrain. Like the mud and stones didn't register. Like its weight had no impact. I whispered to Zala, my dog, to stay behind the stump. She didn't move. Smart girl. Still sharp after all these years. The bear passed down slope toward the edge of my west traps. I followed slow. Didn't want to shoot unless I had to. Not something that big. Not at night. The idea was to track, wait, trap. But traps didn't work. First snare popped under its weight. The second one, a trip spike I made from buried iron rods, went off. Should have shattered its hind leg. It kept going. Dragged the spike another 40 meters before it caught on a pine root and tore loose. The thing didn't bleed. It didn't roar. It just kept moving. I tracked it for 3 days. Didn't sleep right. Ate pine nuts and dried squirrel. Watched it wander without eating. No signs of denning. No marking. No scent marking either. Not even a piss trail. It wasn't alive. But it wasn't dead. Not like the walkers I've put down. 3rd day, I led it into a stake pit. Took 4 hours. Used scraps of pork skin tied to a cord. Zala stayed behind. Too risky to bring her close. When it finally fell in, it didn't flail. It didn't scream. It landed hard. Impaled on 6 stakes. Spine first. Sat there like a statue. It stayed like that until sunset. Then it started twitching. One paw dragged across the dirt, twitching in rhythm, like a broken metronome. Then it started chewing. On its own leg. Gnawing down through the meat like a grinder. I emptied a full mag into the skull. Still moved. Had to break a long iron spike from the trap gate and drive it clean through the mouth, into the brainstem, then reload and do it again. Took 3 tries. Zala barked the whole time. She knew something was wrong before I did. After it stopped moving, I waited a full night before going in. The smell was different. Not fresh rot. Old radiation. Like melted plastic and boiled metal. I've been near reactor scrap sites. I know the scent. That bear came from somewhere hot. Somewhere irradiated. And whatever the virus is, it survived in there. That was the first time I saw a non-human carrier. And the worst part is, I don't think it was the only one. I found claw marks on the ridge above the east-facing cliffs. 3 more trails. Lighter, maybe cubs, or smaller scavengers. If they were exposed too, We're not looking at just walkers anymore. We're looking at evolution under pressure. I've reinforced my fences. Tripwires are tied to signal flares now. Zala stays leashed at night. I don't risk her running free, not anymore. So if you're near the Banat border or anywhere in Carpathia and you've got ears on this channel, listen close. If you see something big moving wrong, if it doesn't react to noise, if it walks like it doesn't weigh anything, don't engage. Don't trap. Don't test. Burn it, from a distance. Then move camp. Fast. This is Arpad Kellerman. I'll be back up here tomorrow with a fresh charge if the sun stays out. If you've seen what I've seen, ping back. Otherwise, stay sharp. And don't let your dog out after sunset. People think the subway shuts down when the power dies. It doesn't. Trains coast. Signals fail safe. But steel still rolls, and steel weighs memory. My last normal shift began at 0600 hours. 3rd sub-basement, Rail Control Center on West 53rd. 2 of us were watching the B Division board. 36 active trains. Green blocks inching through tunnels like Christmas lights on a timer. Then a red icon blinked over Canal Street. Emergency brake pulled. Procedure says call train crew. I did. A voice answered on the open mic. Not a conductor. Wet consonants, vowels floating. A scrape, like teeth grinding enamel. We thought it was a prank until the CCTV came up. The platform looked wrong, crowded at first glance, but nobody moved. They stood shoulder to shoulder, faces slack, heads tilted as if listening to an invisible loudspeaker. A passenger staggered off car 3. When he fell, the crowd swayed, bent, and lowered on him the way grass bends under rain. I tried the emergency override. Dead. The switching network threw errors faster than I could silence them. The only control left was power routing. So I did the one thing manuals forbid. I cut traction current to everything south of 14th Street. No juice, no rolling stock. Trains braked on residual compression and stayed dark. I figured we'd buy rescue teams an hour. Instead, the city grid hiccuped. Feeders tripped. Blocks uptown flickered. In the CCTV mosaic, I watched passengers pry doors with bare hands, spill into tunnels, walk north against the blackout. Each time the cameras refreshed, more grey shapes filled the tubes, shoulders scraping tile, fingers trailing third-rail boots that should have vaporized them if the juice were live. By 1600 hours, every phone line screamed busy or dead. Only landline to the Office of Emergency Management rang through, but nobody answered. Half the dispatch floor panicked and bolted for street level. I locked myself and 2 techs in control room 62. Ballistic glass, double steel doors, separate air stack. The others never came back. Night fell. We killed the fluorescent lamps, left only the LCDs for light. Outside the glass, concourse level flooded, slow shapes drifting between snack kiosks. They slammed into walls, righted, moaned, drifted on. You could almost forget they were people. Then, someone I knew. Danny Reyes, signal foreman, shambled past the viewport. His hard hat hung by the strap, chest spurting something dark from a bite that tore through his vest. He kept walking, trailing fluid that steamed on the tile. We rationed snacks, pretzels, cola syrup, powdered protein from HR's wellness drive. Water came from a maintenance tap. We triple filtered it through lab screens. 2 weeks later, a pump failed in the air handler. Filters clogged with decay smell. We rigged shop vac hoses to bypass the coil, but the odor stayed, sweet and sour like rotting fruit. I spent nights pressing my ear to glass, listening to the shuffle outside. When the filters whined harder than the dead, I slept. Day 29, a tremor shook the floor. The LCDs rippled. Dust drifted from acoustic panels. A boom echoed. Distant, maybe a subway transformer blowing. Emergency lights kicked on, red. In the glow, I saw the concourse floor buckle near the Bleecker Street corridor feed. Concrete cracked. Something big, maybe a maintenance cart full of bodies, had collapsed above. The dead slid backward as the grade pitched. Limbs jammed escalator steps, snapping. They tried to climb, but traction grease slicked the tile. They kept falling, piling, rising again. That was when I first said it aloud. We are not getting rescued. The tech stared, hollow-eyed. I gave them a choice. Stay here with dwindling filters, or climb the emergency shaft to 6th Avenue. We opened the hatch at 0300. I went last. The ladder rungs were greasy. Halfway up, we heard claws on steel below. Infected had found the shaft. They couldn't climb fast, but their nails shrieked on the pipes. We reached the street grate, pushed harder. It wouldn't budge. NYFD bolts those lids. I told the techs to brace the grate with their backs. I took the bolt cutters from my belt, found a padlock on a service alcove, clipped it, and squeezed into a crawl space between ducts. It led to a sewer junction. The smell nearly dropped me, but the tunnel was empty and dry enough to stand. I shouted for the techs. They never answered. I heard steel thrum like a tuning fork, then a low, wet hush. The grate was silent after that. I walked sewer lines for hours, climbed a maintenance ramp, surfaced in a parking garage near Madison Square Garden. Streets were littered with taxis idling on empty tanks. No sirens, no horns, just the slap of my boots and a breeze carrying dust that tasted like burnt plastic. I'm alive in a utility vault under Penn Station now. Solar charger, handheld HF, canned beans. Water from a restroom condenser I boiled twice. If you hear me, anyone, send cleaning procedures for an oil bath filter Type C 19-inch, or trade me for a map to a surface exit not choked with dead weight. I'll be monitoring this frequency every even hour. Blessed are the broken who rise again, for they do not seek food, they do not seek shelter, they do not seek revenge, they seek only completion. This is Brother Ellery speaking, not a title I gave myself. It was passed to me by a man of the cloth, a real one, back in Alberta, before the sky turned grey and the last alarm stopped screaming. He was a simple man, old, with calloused hands and a stitched Bible bound in leather. He said the book warned of fire, of floods, of pestilence, but never once did it say that resurrection would be clean. I met him when I still believed in the old ways, governments, towns, bloodlines. I asked him plain as I could, why would God let this happen? He told me, son, maybe it isn't happening to us. Maybe it's happening for us. That was before he walked out into the snow and let himself be taken. Arms wide, eyes closed. He did not scream. He did not run. He went quietly, like a candle going out in a dark room. I didn't understand then, but I do now. I know many of you listening think I'm lost, a traitor to what we were. You think I speak madness, but madness only lives where pride and fear wrestle in the dark. What I offer is neither. What I offer is clarity. The dead who walk, the revived, as we call them, do not hate. They do not rage. They exist in perfect singularity, purpose, completion. No more hunger of the mind, only motion, only silence. They are not the damned, they are the harvest. And some of you have tried to burn the field. There are camps out there, hidden in the woods, filled with frightened souls who shoot before they speak. They chain the revived like animals. They cut them down for sport, for study. But we do not fear your bullets. We do not hide in fear. We are the faithful. We are the revival. Yes, I say we, because I am not alone. You've heard rumors, whispers on short-band frequencies, camps of the willing, followers who do not resist when the time comes. That is us. From Manitoba to Montana, from Ontario to Omaha. We are growing. We wear no uniforms. We carry no banners. We do not raid. We do not steal. We watch. We wait. We pray. We take in those who are ready to abandon the old flesh. Let me be clear. We do not feed the sick to the rot. That is not our way. But when the moment comes, when someone hears the call and lays down arms, lays down fear, we do not stop them. We bear witness. The change is not infection. It is not disease. It is transformation. Baptism not of water, but of rot and silence. A second birth. Some of you think we're evil. You say we're the reason the world can't heal. But I say this. The world is healing through the fire, not after it. The old world was broken, divided by wealth, cruelty, lies. The new world walks on even legs. It does not argue. It does not discriminate. It moves forward, always forward. There is a reason why so many fell so fast. It was not bad luck. It was design. The first breathless winter after the outbreak was not a failure of mankind. It was the shedding of excess, the clearing of the field. I have heard your counter-signals, your voices, half mad with grief, clinging to radios like they are confessionals. I've heard your desperation. Let me tell you something that might sting. Not everyone deserves to survive. Survival is not the highest form of being. Transformation is. Let go of your clocks, your currencies, your childhood notions of justice and fair play. The game is over. The rules are gone. What remains is the truth. We are not dead. We are becoming. You can destroy the body. You can burn it, drown it, crush it. But the change continues. It is not contained to flesh. It is idea. It is destiny. And for those who think they can halt the tide, I say to you, the ocean does not stop for stones. Now I speak directly to those who have harmed our kin. I know you think of the revival as a cult, as sickness. You justify your actions by calling us dangerous, irrational, but you are no longer agents of order. You are scavengers propping up a corpse of a world that no longer fits. You call us zealots, and maybe we are, but zeal, unlike fear, is contagious. Do not shoot when you see us. Do not torch our grounds. Do not take our converts. We do not retaliate often, but when we do, we leave a message, one that does not need radio to be heard. To those who feel lost, who feel something stirring in their chest when they see the slow, steady walk of the dead, I say, come find us. There are paths along the Missouri River marked with broken lanterns and white cloth. Follow them. If you are not ready, turn back. If you are, walk in peace. I will be waiting at the Echo Chapel, 10 miles north of the old airfield near the border. Come at dusk. Do not bring weapons. Do not speak unless spoken to. If you are accepted, you will not return to this frequency. This is Brother Ellery. May the hush carry you. May the stillness claim you. May the change complete you. We are not dead. We are becoming. And this message will repeat. I sit at once routed data for 3 armies. Now it bears a shortwave set, 2 flickering green phosphor screens, and crumbs from the last pack of pumpernickel I will ever taste. Location, Tempelhof Sector A, 15 meters under the old airfield. Rooms poured in 1943 and rewired every decade since. When Brussels Command dissolved, our detachment remained as automated rebroadcast. Directive, maintain Europe mission net, even if operator strength falls to 1. Strength fell, now stands at 1. On April 19th, I received flash red from Ramstein. American staff evacuating by VTOL south via Bavaria. Message ended with partial grid and exhortation to continue music. Music means filler loops that reassure anyone scanning that HQ still hums. I cued Beethoven's 7th slowed to half speed, patched into long skip. The irony, symphony about destiny knocking, played to ruins where doors ripped from hinges months earlier. Days after Ramstein ghosted, siren relay tripped. Infrared breach on perimeter fence above my head. CCTV upstairs showed 3 figures in police tack gear dragging pallets of MREs from supply hut. Helmets hung loose, necks bent unnatural. Infected wearing uniforms like children in carnival costume. They lugged crates by instinct to sound, not hunger. When no more noise, they milled. One found siren box, beat it until klaxon circuit popped. Silence returned. They stood, swayed, forgot purpose, wandered off, leaving rations smashed open like flour sacks for rats. I considered surface to salvage, but protocol. Bunker hatch welded from inside, acetylene torch stored topside. So I rationed deeper. Generator diesel good for 10 days. Batteries add 3. To stretch, I powered up only at dusk for scheduled NATO net-in, even though only call sign still pinging is my own parity echo. I send sitrep, I receive static, routine anchors sanity. June 5th ground shook. No explosion, just long groan as if city sighed. Monitors flicked, dust drifted. Later CCTV, still functional, showed Fernsehturm TV tower leaning 5 degrees. Base charred, perhaps sabotage. Its dish farm once relayed every channel on continent. Now it tilts like a sundial no one will read. Collapse severed microwave link chain. My bunker became last node shouting into feedback loop. I switched to content that cost no bitrate, music. At 1900 each day I broadcast AM carrier on 1.200 MHz, topped with wartime swing, Zara Leander, Glenn Miller. Anything survivors might whistle while scavenging. If infected mimic sound, reports say they parrot moans. Music might divert them from real voices. Unverified, but experiments matter. Occasionally a voice edges through sideband. A Polish grain elevator watchman, a Danish trawler engineer stuck in Kiel Canal, an Italian priest still ringing campanile in Siena. All ask same. When will NATO send recovery teams? I read from SOP card. Stand fast, maintain beacon. Aerial relief contingent in progress. Lies weighed against panic. Lies win by grams. After call signs fade, I log coordinates I cannot forward. Food now. Canned celery root. Energy gel packs expired 2023. 1 case Weissbier turned to vinegar. Water. Sump pumps still pull from filtration bed. UV lamp functional. Ammunition. 3 magazines. HKG-36 locked in rack, because issuing it to myself would require a second signature trail auditors will never audit. Last Tuesday I opened Command Bulletin Archive, printed copy of NATO Charter Article 5, taped it to wall, and marked each day no ally responds with a hole punch. Charter looks like lace curtain now. When paper falls apart, I will know collective defense ended quietly, not with fanfare. I transmit this on borrowed electrolytes. 2 car batteries scavenged from pool of staff cars parked in garage level. Cables snake up stairwell gap I chiseled through door cement. When acid dries, carrier dies. Advice to listeners. If distant authority promises lift out, weigh the odds in liters of fuel they still possess. When calculus fails, remember, airstrips clutter fast with hopeful souls. Basements remain underrated. I live on the roof of a 4-story produce warehouse that used to smell like citrus boxes and diesel forklifts. Army engineers strung razor wire around the Eastern Market sheds the week martial law fell, but the wire sagged when the guard trucks rolled south. The dead still shuffle below, bumping their shins on wooden pallets until daylight bakes what's left of their curiosity. I can't see them. My retina's checked out after a chemical spill at Chrysler's Trenton plant. Shapes, gone. Color, memory. What's left is sound and heat and the way the wind tastes when it curls round a broken window. I lean on those like a man leans on old gospel. After the outbreak, younger neighbors fled for the suburbs, thinking lawns and cul-de-sacs would slow rot. City buses died in the intersections, so I stayed. A charity outfit once gifted me a Gold Zero solar briefcase. I kept it for porch radio sessions with truckers. Now the panels face south on the roof and feed a lawn tractor battery scavenged across Mack Avenue. Sitting beside the panel is a tape recorder, one of those clunky voice memo bricks reporters used before smartphones buried them. At sunrise, I sit cross-legged, hit record and talk. Jokes I stole off late night AM during the 70s. Instructions for changing drum brakes on a 94 Lumina. Lists of medicinal weeds you can steep when pharmacies are only empty glass. I describe the soundtrack of Detroit when Motown trumpets echoed off red brick, so kids born in this plague might imagine traffic that sang. I tell them where the clean wells are under the Eastern Market shed, 5 floorboards, and how to test canned food lids by ear. Each afternoon I rewind the cassette with a pencil, key my handheld FT65, and let the tape roll into a handheld condenser microphone. 2 watts, that's all. Propagation gods carry it across the Great Lakes like a skipping stone. Some evenings faint voices answer. Ham operators on lighthouses, a dairy farmer outside Toledo who runs his milking pumps from a John Deere crankshaft, a pair of cousins holed up in an old ski lodge north of Grayling. They thank me for the stories, trade me weather or safe corridors. None ever ask what I look like, which saves me the trouble of describing darkness. Ammunition. 1 baseball bat with bicycle grip tape. Accuracy never fails. Food. Rooftop garden in shipping crates. Kale, mint and sorrel because they don't mind frost. For protein, pigeons land on the cornice at dawn, I net them with mesh window screen and honor the city tradition of squab dinners. A blind man gutting birds may sound comic, but my hands memorized precision long before vision failed. Threats rise whenever cold thickens. Walkers sniff fermenting compost and shuffle up fire stairs. Their breaths rattle like spent drill bits. I stamp boot heels. They follow noise, and I lead them between air conditioning units until they tumble off the north parapet onto box trucks parked below. One more husk added to the skyline silhouette nobody sees, but everyone smells. If my voice hits your coil tonight, snag the jokes, share the break tips, and please, send back one new piece of knowledge. Doesn't have to be grand. How to sharpen a knife with concrete curb. How to brew coffee from dandelion roots. Whatever keeps the next mind turning. I will be on frequency each evening 2 hours before the sky bleeds coal dust red. Follow the static until you hear a whistle solo from Louis Jordan. That's my interval signal. After that, the jokes begin. Do you remember what fear smells like? I do. It smells like wet iron and your own sweat soaked into your sleeves. I used to live in that scent, every night since the fall. I don't know what day it is anymore. Not really. The sky's been grey for weeks, and the woods make the clock meaningless. But I know what changed. I remember the sound it made. My name's Vera Hrishko. I'm 31. I was an accounting assistant before the world ended. Had a flat in Mukachevo. Commute, tea breaks, social media, laundry piles. The first time I saw a rotting, I peed myself behind a bakery. They call them walkers, the infected, the turned. I call them rotters, because that's what they are. Soft meat, moldy movement, black teeth, and memories gone to gas. At first, I couldn't look at them. I slept with my head under my arms. I cried when dogs barked. I imagined every gust of wind as hands reaching. I was prey, fragile, trapped in my own skin. That changed in week 5. I was holed up in a forestry station outside Uzhhorod. Big windows, too exposed, but I was desperate for heat. I thought the shutters would hold. They didn't. One rotter pushed through, slipped between the hinges like a drunk ghost. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Just a squeak, a cornered rabbit sound. It came at me slow. Not like the movies. Just that lazy forward lurch. Arms out, mouth flapping like it forgot how to close it. I didn't think. I grabbed a metal poker from the stove and swung. Not like a trained fighter, like a woman who refused to be meat. The bone cracked. So did something in me. When it dropped, twitching on the floor, I didn't collapse. I didn't shake. I looked down and saw myself reflected in the black of its pupil, already filming over. And I smiled. The next day I walked to a nearby settlement, killed another on the way, cleaner this time. One jab, then gone. No guilt, just necessity. I traded for boots and better tools, didn't explain the blood on my sleeves. Since then, I've hunted rotters in the woods like it's sport. I listen for them in the rustle of brush. I smell the rot before I hear the moan, and when I find them, I end them. Not because it's fun, not because I'm a monster, but because I feel real when I do. In the old world, I filled spreadsheets. I sat still and stayed quiet and waited for promotions that never came. In this world, I move, I kill, I protect others when I want to. And when someone tells me to stay back, I don't. I like this world better. Does that make me dangerous? Good, because I'm not a rabbit anymore. I'm the steel in the fire. If you're hearing this, let me start by saying this isn't a message of despair. You've heard plenty of that already. This is about something different, something rare. My name is Anna, and I'm speaking from a settlement we call Seabright. It's nestled along the coast just south of Monterey, California, where we built our homes from salvage, steel, driftwood, and concrete. We raise cattle, catch fish, grow small crops behind strong fences, and trade with passing survivors. After years of struggle, we have a life. Not perfect, but good enough. But that's not what I want to share today. Today, I want to tell you about something even rarer, something beautiful. Before the world collapsed, I lived in a small town in Oregon, working as a school librarian. Books and quiet conversations were my life. I never married, rarely dated, never found someone who understood my silence. I watched from the edges as friends built families, raised children, moved forward. I stayed behind, content in my loneliness. Or so I thought. When the epidemic started, my quiet life disappeared overnight. Neighbors turned, streets went silent. I hid in the school's basement for weeks, reading old survival manuals by flashlight, eating snacks from the vending machines until they ran empty. Eventually, I moved south, where the winter wouldn't kill me. Years passed alone. I scavenged. I hid. I fought quietly, constantly afraid. I was convinced loneliness was the safest thing in this new world, until I found Seabright. It wasn't much at first. 5 shacks, a few patched boats, a handful of exhausted people staring suspiciously at me from behind makeshift walls. I convinced them to let me stay by trading books and teaching their children to read and write. Days became weeks, weeks became months. I learned to fish, to maintain nets and lines, to process salted fish for long-term storage. Life became stable, predictable, but still lonely. Then he arrived. His name was Gabriel, a quiet, careful man who'd lost everything in Nevada and had walked for weeks to reach us. He was strong, handy with tools, skilled with rifles, but gentle in ways the world had nearly forgotten. He worked hard without complaint, built stronger fences, repaired boats, hunted small game, defended our community from threats both living and dead. I noticed him first from a distance, curious but wary of a man so capable. Yet, over time, our silence grew comfortable. We would sit together after work, watch the ocean as the sun dipped below waves stained purple and gold, and never need words. He understood loneliness as deeply as I did. Eventually, careful affection became something deeper. Trust led to quiet companionship, then to something rare and wonderful, love. It felt strange at first, alien in a world that had long ago lost gentleness. But love didn't weaken us, it strengthened our resolve. We worked side by side, reinforcing walls, harvesting crops, scavenging supplies. Together we taught others how to make fishing traps, how to preserve meat, how to set alarms around the settlement's perimeter. Our skills complemented each other. Gabriel's toughness balanced my cautious nature. My optimism soothed his occasional melancholy. Together we were stronger, better prepared, ready to build something lasting. 3 years later, against impossible odds, I gave birth to a son. We named him Eli, meaning ascension, a small miracle born into this broken world. Raising a child in an apocalypse is more than difficult. It's terrifying. We've hidden in shelters as hordes passed. We've stayed awake through dark nights, clutching sharpened knives as predators prowled outside. But Eli survived. He thrived. He grew strong, curious, clever. Gabriel taught him how to fish, how to shoot small weapons safely. I taught him to read and write, to draw pictures in the sand, and to listen carefully to the sounds of the world. Eli is now 4 years old, healthy, playful, innocent, a symbol of hope where hope is rare. Today, Seabright has become a real community. We have over 50 people now, families like ours, survivors who refuse to give up on civilization. We have cattle grazing behind walls fortified with salvaged steel sheets and reinforced concrete. We fish in careful rotations, respecting the sea to ensure sustainable catches. There's a watchtower to spot incoming threats and safe houses built from solid shipping containers filled with preserved food, medicines, and ammunition. We trade actively, exchanging dried fish, cured meat, leather and cattle for ammunition, fuel, tools, and information. We've seen raiders, fought them off with precision and determination. We know what it means to defend our home fiercely. And that's why I'm broadcasting this message now, to invite those of you who hear my voice clearly. If you've survived this long, you're resourceful, strong, and dangerous. We need that here. If you come armed, prepared to fight, willing to work and trade fairly, you're welcome in Seabright. We need builders, mechanics, farmers, fishermen, healers, hunters, and fighters. We need strength and skills. Bring ammunition, tools, medicines. bring strength of mind, determination, and honesty. But if you claim helplessness, we won't believe you. The helpless are long dead or wandering empty-eyed among the lost. If you come claiming you have nothing to offer, we'll suspect deception or worse. We don't want empty promises. We don't trust easy smiles. If you approach, watch your head from sudden shots and suspicious gazes. We've survived too long to let our guard down. We'll welcome the strong, but we'll never again shelter parasites or predators. This is no sanctuary. It's an outpost of humanity's final stand. There's no easy life here, only honest work and a chance to build something meaningful from the rubble. We won't rebuild the old world. We don't want it back. We'll build something better, something wiser, something that honors the sacrifices we've all made. And in the quiet moments, there will be peace. Gabriel still sits with me at dusk, Eli asleep safely nearby, and we watch the waves, grateful for each quiet breath, for each day we've fought to earn. Love can still be found at the end of the world. It's real, rare, precious, and hard-earned. If you have survived and still believe in building something good, come to Seabright. You'll be welcomed, not warmly perhaps, but fairly. Until then, stay armed, stay alert, keep your loved ones safe, survive long enough, and you'll find something worth living for. My name is Anna. I'll keep this signal going as long as I can. We'll wait for you in Seabright. If you're out there, alive and able, consider this invitation yours. Together we'll build something real from the ashes. Good luck out there, survivors. Keep moving forward. My children, Rami and Hannah, were 15 and 17 when the infection came. Not young enough to be spared, not old enough to be hardened. My husband was already gone. Not to the virus. He died in a scaffolding collapse outside Fayum the year before. I was alone when Cairo fell. We did not flee the city. I took my children west, toward the farms where I grew up. We found a shuttered community near Saqqara, old houses surrounded by concrete walls. At first, we welcomed others, travelers, traders, a man from Alexandria with a radio, a woman who said she was a nurse but knew more about knives than bandages. I told my children, watch how people sleep, listen to how they chew, trust only your eyes. Rami was kind, Hannah, sharper. One night, a man brought us dates and a bag of flour, said his name was Hossam. He smiled too much, talked about rebuilding, about making rules. That night, he touched Hannah's shoulder when she passed him. She didn't flinch. She waited, then told me. I said nothing. The next morning, I told her, if someone touches you again without permission, you hit back. Do not wait for someone else to save you. That night, he tried again. This time in the storeroom, Hannah broke his jaw with a brass pestle. We left at dawn, no explanation, just walked, through trash dunes, dry canals. Rami wanted to apologize. I forbade it. I told him, the world does not deserve your guilt when it does not protect your sister. We settled near a date grove south of Dashur. They were infected, yes. Slow, sun-blistered. But they were not the danger. It was the people who still smiled too much. We traded with an old man who'd been a museum guard. He showed us how to use flare guns, how to trap infected using sound tunnels. When I taught my children literature, I gave them poems of revolution. When I taught them survival, I gave them silence and hard eyes. Rami asked me if I hated the world now. I told him, I love you both more than the world ever deserved. That's why I will teach you to survive it, even if that means becoming something it fears. This is Damian Peraza, age 56, former night shift attendant at Estacion Los Alamos, 20 kilometers south of Santa Ana on Federal Highway 2. I'm not a fighter, not a soldier, not a survivor in the way the others are. I never thought I'd have anything to say worth putting on the air. But I've got the time now. The fuel's gone and the lights are out, but this old patch still works if I keep the solar trickle going. So I'm talking, because maybe someone else needs to hear how it started, for people like me. I worked the night shift at Los Alamos for 16 years. Before that, I ran a corner tire shop in Magdalena that went under after the highway expansion. Before that, a little bit of everything. You don't get to be my age out here without a few failures stacked under your ribs. I messed up a lot in life. 2 kids. Don't talk to either of them anymore. One's in Guadalajara. The other, last I heard, was trying to cross into Arizona. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good husband. But I showed up every day to that pump, swept the lot, wiped the dead bugs off the ice chest, sold Cokes and peanuts to truckers who didn't remember my name the next day. I thought I'd die behind that glass counter, watching soccer reruns on a fuzzy portable. But something changed. It didn't come with smoke. Not first, not with sirens or screaming. It came with a silence. I remember the moment exactly. March 15th, 1:15 in the morning, clear sky, cold enough that the soda machine compressor wouldn't shut off. I was watching the overnight news loop on the wall screen, those glossy studio anchors who could make a prison riot or a refinery collapse sound like it was part of the normal background noise of the world. Only this time, they weren't reading from the teleprompter right. Their eyes weren't blinking. One woman's voice cracked halfway through a sentence. She looked off screen, like someone was holding up a board she didn't know how to read. The camera cut away too fast. Then it came back. But now, it wasn't the anchor anymore. It was a medical technician, a real one. I know because she was wearing one of those old Red Cross border zone uniforms, worn through, sun-faded. She didn't speak in broadcaster rhythm. She just said, "Stay inside. Do not go to hospitals. Do not attempt resuscitation of any patient showing neurological signs." That was the sentence that broke me. Not because it made sense, but because it didn't. Do not attempt resuscitation. You only say that when something's happening, you can't explain. Something that breaks rules you never thought were breakable. After that, the feed went dead. I looked around the station. No lights on the highway, no cars, not a single sound, but the buzz of that compressor and the soft hum of the flickering screen. I didn't know what to do, so I did what I always did. I sat behind the counter, unwrapped a stale ham sandwich, drank a bottle of Jumex, waited for the night to end. But the night didn't end. At 3:10 a.m., the first pickup truck came in. I knew the driver, Andres, from the ranchlands north of Alta. He didn't get out, just honked, short, sharp, then again. I opened the door. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring out the windshield, eyes wide open, like he wasn't even aware I was walking toward him. I stepped closer, knocked on the glass. That's when I saw the blood on the inside of the window. It was streaked, like a hand had smeared it. But it wasn't Andres's hand. It was too small, a child's handprint, one that had slid down the glass like it was trying to get out. Andres blinked once, then his head snapped sideways, not turned, snapped, and he started thrashing inside the cab like he was chewing on something that wasn't there. I didn't wait to find out more. I backed into the station, locked the door, turned off all the interior lights, sat behind the ice cooler with a wrench in my hand for 2 hours. He never got out. The truck just idled until dawn, then rolled forward slowly into the drainage ditch near Pump 3. I think he must have been dead already. Maybe the thing inside him had just been using him up. After sunrise, more came. Not people, feeds, static bursts over the emergency band, pieces of old police chatter. One said, "Zone Bravo is compromised. Repeat, Bravo is breached. Fall back to red sectors." Another one just kept repeating, "Human bite transference confirmed. Neurological decay begins at exposure." That's when I started writing everything down. Because I knew, in that moment, that the world had changed, and I'd missed the part where it asked if we wanted it to. I stayed at the station for 3 more days, burned every paper bill I had in the stove, ate through the vending shelf in order, sweet, then salty, then the weird tuna crackers no one ever touched. On the 5th day, the first infected walked past. She was wearing a postal vest, barefoot, face torn down the left side like it had been dragged across asphalt. But no moaning, no screaming, just movement, slow, deliberate, not towards me, just forward. And when she passed the reflective window, she turned her head, and looked at her own reflection. I've seen a lot since then. I've seen a school bus full of children drive off the road because the driver had turned. I've seen a man torch a church just to light up the bell tower for help, and no one came. I've heard voices over broken speakers that sound like prayers, or warnings. I don't know anymore. But I still remember that first night, how quiet it was, and how I didn't scream, because screaming doesn't happen when your world breaks. It comes later. First comes silence, then the long waiting, then the sound of your life ending, not in a crash, but in a slow turning away from what used to be real. This is Damien Peraza. I'm alive, for now. And if you're hearing this, remember, when the world ends, you won't know it from noise. You'll know it from the weight in your stomach that tells you something is wrong, and nothing will ever be right again. I wasn't the first to eat someone. Just want that clear. When I walked into the feed store back in 25 and saw what those men were roasting, I'd already gone 4 days on boiled shoe leather and crow meat. They said it was goat. I knew it wasn't. I ate it anyway. The cook back then, this old army guy named Clennon, said something to me I'll never forget. He said, "You don't need to start with the worst. You just need to stop pretending you're still waiting for FEMA." I took over from him 3 weeks later when the tunnels collapsed, and he didn't come back. We called it The Hollow, an old strip mine site with shipping containers and a 1.5 truck we kept fueled by siphoning from ambulances. I ran the kitchen. That meant I ran the camp. You want to know how? Simple. Everyone needs to eat, but no one wants to think about where the meat comes from. I started tagging every incoming supply with paint markers. Blue for scavenged, green for bartered, red for live donation. Red tags didn't get questions. Those were usually taken from rival camps we rolled. We didn't kill all of them. Some were made examples of. Some got patched up and used later. Scarecrows we stuck at the edge of roads with signs on their necks like, "Took food from kids." Didn't matter if it was true. Message worked. You think I'm a monster? I get that. But you weren't there when the snowfall trapped 87 people in a quarry with 2 weeks of food. You didn't watch grown men cry over mouse bones. I made rules. Never kids. Never sick. Never someone with a name you knew. Always quick. Always clean. One time I let a recruit do it slow. Only once. We cut his tongue out and hung him over the gate. His name was Lee. Now it's a warning. I cooked with wild herbs and juniper to cover the smell. Ground meat went into stew. You'd never know the difference. But you'd live. And you'd thank me for it. If there's a God, he didn't stop me. Maybe he wanted to see if we'd rather eat our morals or die clean. The ones who tried clean are bones now. Last spring, a preacher walked into our territory with 2 girls and a dog. Said he was just passing through. I let him in, gave him stew, even offered a cot. But that night, one of the girls radioed out. She had a hidden transmitter in her shoe sole. Called in a safe zone patrol. 6 men came. I fed them to the same stew pot the preacher went into. Why am I telling you this? Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I want someone to hear it while there's still someone left to be disgusted. Or maybe I'm just bragging. I kept 143 souls alive for 2 winters. We didn't have angels. We had me. You want to know how I'll go? Not starving. Not whimpering in the cold. I got one last stew in me. If I go quiet, it means they finally figured out what the red tag meant. But I'll bet you they still eat what's in the pot. My apartment balcony overlooks the long spine of Mount Lycabettus and the ghost roofs of the National Archaeological Museum. Before the tourists vanished, the avenue rang with car horns and scooter exhaust. Now the broad sycamores grow into the trolley lines, and the only horns are seagulls who forgot the sea. I have outlived an Italian occupation, a civil war, a junta, and the closing of the conservatoire, where I taught scales to children too shy to sing. The infection is merely the latest conductor's baton telling us to switch tempo. When soldiers piled shipping container barricades along Petition Street, they promised evacuation for the elderly. I thanked the young corporal, shut my wrought iron door, and boiled lentils. A woman my age moved through famine once. Bus queues do not tempt me. The radio set is a Philips tube model 1958 gifted by my late husband. It drank 220 volts during the junta blackouts by stealing from tram feeds. Now it sips from 3-car batteries rigged by a neighbor who never returned for them. I replaced the cracked speaker cone with parchment torn from an old hymnal, Dominique, so every note now carries faint whisper of Latin when bass vibrates. Each sunset I climb 5 flights, haul the set onto the roof, and point a loop antenna at the Parthenon. I broadcast nothing but music, lullabies my mother hummed while mold bombs fell in 41, and Rebetiko laments sailors once crooned in hash dens near Piraeus. I choose pieces without words so no tongue offends. The dead do not dance, but lullabies coat silence with honey. Listeners, a fisherman on Salamis Island taps applause on hull plates by banging wrench near his microphone. Delay and echo turn the beat into distant artillery. A nurse in a Thessaloniki safe zone pipes the signal through ward speakers so patients drifting into fevers think grandmothers stand bedside. Once, a boy on Crete whistled counter-melody, off-key, but courage counts more than pitch. Last month, storm lightning cracked a transformer south of Omanoia Square. Shockwave rattled windows. I gazed down and saw walkers pause mid-shuffle, heads tilted, as if they too heard the key change in the city's tired symphony. Music ended when the battery arc fused my patch cords. I sat alone under stars sharp enough to draw blood if you brushed them. For the first time since the plague, fear crept through my ribcage. Not of death, but of quiet with no room for lullabies. Next morning, I scavenged the wedding silver I had hidden since colonels in polished boots knocked on doors. I pounded a tea tray into a new speaker diaphragm, soldered burnt leads, and rewired tubes until filaments gave orange glow like coals in a brazier. When I switched on, static flowed, and the walkers below resumed their drifting. I end every broadcast with Nictarino, a 2-minute guitar nocturne written by a blind composer from Smyrna a century ago. Its waving, open chords settle nerves, the way ouzo settles a quarrel. Slowly, sweetly, finally. After the last note, I let the carrier run empty for 5 breaths so listeners can fill the gap with whatever hopes they have left. Then, I cut power and listened to Athens breathe, a city that outlasted Persian fire, Roman marble thieves, Ottoman cannon, and disco. If you hear my music, whistle a few bars back on the wind. The batteries cannot cross oceans, but a melody carried on another transmitter proves song outlives its singer. Name's Callum Reeves. Used to be a machinist, worked out of Eastleigh before everything went sideways. They shut the depot down the 3rd week in. Rail unions dissolved. Fuel was seized. Engineers conscripted or disappeared. I stayed behind. Figured I owed more to these old tracks than I ever did to Parliament. Still here. Still riding. The train I operate now, number 156998, was a single-car diesel unit that once ran the rural loops. Light freight, passenger work, back before the big electrics pushed these into retirement. She runs on a retrofitted Perkins diesel block and scavenged aviation fuel when I can find it. The bogies are still true, rails creak like old bones, but they hold. My line runs through Surrey, skirting the edges of towns that no longer breathe. Guildford to Wokingham on the best days, sometimes as far as Reading if the tracks are clear. I don't pick up passengers. Not anymore. The last one I did was a woman named Kate, maybe 30, traveling alone with a radio backpack and one of those ministry-issued notebooks. Said she'd been mapping contamination patterns from the air before satellites went dark. She told me stories I didn't want to believe, about what happened to London. I'd already seen the smoke, the black sheets of it that rolled out east and turned the sun to a copper smear. I'd assumed it was riots, fires, looters. It wasn't. In the first 2 weeks, after containment failed, and it became clear the cities were breeding grounds, they started leveling bridges, took down overpasses, dynamited tunnel junctions, anything to slow the spread by foot. But it wasn't enough. The infected kept coming, spilling through underground service lines and drainage access, crossing canals on debris. So they lit London on fire. Royal Air Force, what remained of it, ran napalm sorties over Westminster and South Bank. Kate said the heat was so intense it liquefied entire blocks. The idea was to cauterize the wound. What they did was cremate a city, The Thames turned thick and greasy, bloated with things that didn't burn all the way through. Some floated, some tried to swim. Kate didn't make it past Aldershot. I don't know if it was infection or despair, but I buried her in a freight crate and marked it with her radio, still tuned to the emergency band. That was last summer. The air's colder now, but not cleaner. Ash still clings to the undercarriage when I pass Basingstoke. There's this bridge, Chilworth Junction. It was blown in the early chaos. Half the span hangs like a broken rib over the water. I stop there sometimes, just to sit and listen. On clear days, you can hear groaning from the embankments. Dead things tangled in the brush, unable to climb. I don't help them, I just watch. I've repaired over 9 miles of track since this started. Respliced signal wire, hauled timber from a collapsed mill to shore up crossings. People think you need an army to rebuild a world. You don't. You need patience, grease, and the will to move forward when no one's watching. I run at night. Less movement, less attention. I keep the lights low and the horn off unless absolutely necessary. You learn the rhythm of the dead, the way they shuffle in packs, the way they bunch around heat. Sometimes they follow the train, staggering down the embankment, scraping the metal as I pass. One got caught in the coupling gear once. Took a mile and a half before I could dislodge it with a crowbar. I'm not a hero. I'm not rebuilding civilization. But this line, it still runs. And sometimes that's enough. I make deliveries. Water purifiers, insulated cable, even a box of insulin once that I found in an overturned lorry near Frimley. There are way stations that know me. Little depots fortified by what's left of the Home Guard or old neighborhood watch types. They trade fuel, parts, information. I give them the signal, a long blast followed by 2 shorts, and they lower the barricades. They call me the Iron Ghost. I don't correct them. On rare nights, I hear other whistles, far off. Could be echoes, could be another driver. There were a few like me who stayed behind in their cars, buried in maintenance sheds or stockyards. We don't talk. We just pass each other in the dark, lights dimmed, hands raised in brief salute through cracked windows, like priests in some rusted cathedral. I don't miss the world as it was. I miss the sounds, the vibration of a full yard, the smell of hot steel and rain on the roof tiles. I miss the way stations used to hum with people. Not loud, just full. That kind of noise doesn't come back. I've laid markers along the line, scrap metal cairns, and old semaphore flags. If you see one, it means the track ahead is safe for 50 yards. If it's painted red, turn back. If you find one marked with a loop of copper wire, that's a cache. Inside, you'll find fuel cells, rations, maybe even a flare. Don't thank me. I don't do it for you. I do it because it's the only thing that makes sense anymore. They said we lost control. I say we never had it. All we can do now is keep moving. If you hear this, stay off the main line south of Reading. Bridges are gone and water levels are high. Avoid the burned districts near London. And if you hear the whistle after midnight, 1 long, 2 short, step back from the rails. It's not a ghost. It's just me, still riding, still here. The signal dropped out at exactly 2:17 p.m. We were mid-broadcast. I remember because we were playing a rerun of Backcountry Hour. Something about tracking bear scat. Then static. Just white hiss. No power loss. No warning. I checked every dial. Flipped auxiliary. Switched to backup feed. Still nothing. So I called Bill at the tower in Chester. Got no answer. Then tried the old NOAA relay. Just buzz. I remember standing there with one hand still on the mic, the other on the call switch, not moving. Like if I didn't move, the silence wouldn't be real. I walked outside. Clouds were coming in from the west. Big, slow ones. Not stormy, just ominous. Then came the cars. Not dozens, hundreds, packed with people from over the border. Williston, Watford City. Families. Oil hands. Not running from something. They were just driving away from it. You could see it in their eyes. The way people walk out of funerals. One guy pulled over at the edge of town and just stood by his truck. I asked him where he was heading. He didn't answer. Just said, "It's all gone, man. No more voice. No more tower. That night, we broadcast silence. I left the station on air just to fill the airwaves with something. I played loops of bird calls, distant thunder, a piano record we kept for snow days. The infected didn't come until 3 days later. First was a woman dragging a wheelchair behind her, then a child with blood on his shirt but no wounds. The local grocery tried to stay open with manual locks. The high school became a checkpoint, but nothing felt real. No one raised their voice. I saw someone shot in front of the post office. The shooter didn't run, just walked away like he'd dropped trash in a bin. We used to talk about disaster on the radio like it was an event, a moment. But disaster isn't a single thing. It's a sound, or the lack of it. I kept the transmitter on battery until the 3rd week. I didn't talk, I just played silence. Once, someone responded, a woman in Alberta. Her voice was tired. She said, "I thought I was the only one." Then her voice cracked. I remember just holding the mic and not saying anything, just letting her cry over the signal. That was the last voice I heard live. Now I live under the tower in a root cellar. I run the station once a week, send out old tapes of rainfall and wind. Not news, just presence, because I remember when the signal stopped, and I don't want anyone else to feel like the world left without saying goodbye. If you're still breathing out there, congratulations. You've outlasted about 99% of humanity. I'm Jeremiah, and I'm recording this from what used to be a secured bunker on the outskirts of Asheville. If you're hearing my voice, it means I've managed to rig the repeater correctly one more time. Let's talk survival. Not the flashy kind with guns blazing, but the real kind. The boring kind. The kind that kept me alive underground for 5 years straight. When the outbreak started, I was already prepared. Built myself a shelter beneath an old auto repair garage I owned on the edge of the city. Steel doors, reinforced concrete walls, hidden ventilation shafts, and stocked with enough freeze-dried rations, canned goods, and dry grains to last 10 years. Thought I had it all figured out, but believe me when I say no one's ever fully prepared. You might think canned food and water is all you need, but your real concern down there in the bunker becomes monotony, isolation, and keeping your mind sharp. It's vital you maintain routine. Every morning, I checked every gauge. Oxygen levels, humidity, carbon monoxide, even static on shortwave frequencies. Always kept track on paper. Batteries die, electronics fail, but paper stays honest. The worst enemy in a bunker isn't hunger or cold, it's your own head. Food wasn't a problem at first, but after year 3, every can you open tastes like aluminum and despair. The solution is rotation and variety. Simple trick, grow mushrooms. They thrive in damp, cool environments with minimal care. Just sterilize old coffee grounds in boiling water and inoculate them with spores salvaged from health stores or other survivors. Shiitakes, oysters. They grow fast and provide protein, minerals, vitamins, and flavor. Keeps morale steady. Morale matters more than you know. Water was harder. Stored water tastes foul after 6 months, and filtration systems get clogged or break down. So here's the most reliable method. Layer sand, activated charcoal, made from hardwood charcoal, never treated wood, and gravel in a plastic drum. Water goes in cloudy, comes out clear enough to drink. Still boil it if you can, but that filter will get rid of most toxins. Rainwater harvesting is ideal if you surface occasionally, but keep it concealed. I rigged camouflage netting over collection barrels and pipework, so not even the birds would spot it. Power was solar, at least initially. Had rooftop panels well hidden behind broken satellite dishes. But after the second winter, the output dropped dramatically. Dust, leaves, smoke residue, they reduce efficiency, so climb up once a month at night and clean them silently. Battery bank is key. Big, deep-cycle marine batteries, not car batteries. Those won't cut it. Rotate usage. Recharge fully. A simple LED flashlight system beats electric lights every time. LEDs consume virtually no power. Candles, use sparingly. They contaminate air quality and use oxygen rapidly. Let's talk about defense. Guns are important, but guns run out of ammo. Arrows and bolts can be reused. But they break. If you have time, build traps around your perimeter. Pitfalls with sharpened rebar at the bottom, tripwires connected to silent alarms, simple mechanical snares. You don't need to kill everything. Just slow it down, discourage it, and give yourself warning. My best defense, though, was distraction. Distraction is survival gold. You want the dead gone? Lure them somewhere else. Rig a solar-powered CD player inside a tin can hanging on a tree branch. Reflection of sun creates movement. CD spinning makes noise, draws their attention away. They'll investigate endlessly, giving you safe passage elsewhere. Same applies to animals. Animals, real meat animals, are clever and cautious. Bait your traps with something pungent. Fish guts, fermented fruit, rotten meat soaked in vinegar. You'll get coyotes, raccoons, rabbits. Free protein that renews itself if you don't overhunt. Eventually, no matter how prepared you are, you'll have to move. After 4.5 years underground, a horde swept through, and even my carefully camouflaged exits couldn't hold them. They overwhelmed fences, crushed my traps by sheer numbers. I had no choice but to abandon the bunker. When you leave a shelter, travel light, 20 pounds maximum, always essentials. Flint and steel, not matches. Antibiotics, iodine tablets, surgical tools, duct tape, cordage, a small folding saw, a high-quality tarp doubles as shelter and rain catch. Good boots. You'll never regret good boots. If you walk, avoid main roads entirely. Stick to railways, flat, clear lines, and usually quiet. Bridges are choke points. Avoid unless absolutely necessary. Never walk openly at night. Find elevated positions, tree stands, grain silos, rooftops, anywhere they cannot climb easily, and sleep tied in, never on ground level. Always conceal your sleeping spot with branches or tarp to avoid drones or scavengers spotting you from afar. And don't forget other humans. Don't trust easily. If you must meet someone, neutral ground, daylight only, clear escape routes, and weapons visible but non-threatening. Exchange goods swiftly and vanish. No names, no stories. Be cautious, not paranoid. Paranoia dulls instinct, caution sharpens it. Now my last lesson, keeping your sanity. For years I lived alone underground, with nothing but my own voice and memories. Isolation will break your mind before hunger ever does. Find ways to ground yourself. Routine, small goals, written journals, art. I built models from scraps, recorded thoughts, drew maps of imaginary places. Anything that keeps your mind alive and gives you meaning beyond survival. I know survival tips aren't flashy, they're boring. But boring keeps you alive. Water filtration, food rotation, solar maintenance, distraction devices, silent traps, good boots, mental discipline. These small things saved me for 5 years underground, even as civilization burned above me. Now I broadcast them, hoping you'll find some worth. I'm moving north now, looking for higher ground, better hunting, cleaner water. If you find my old shelter outside Asheville, take what's left. There's hidden caches beneath the floorboards, buried batteries still good, old solar panels tucked behind scrap piles. Use them well. One last thought. Survive long enough, and you might live to see a new world grow from the ashes. Prepare smart, move quiet, and never stop learning. Trust your gut, keep your gear dry, and your knives sharp. I'll keep transmitting these tips as long as my gear holds up. Stay safe out there, survivors. This is Jeremiah, still alive, still moving. People think heat saves us. They watch old videos of them in the snow, half frozen, shuffling slow, and they think, I'd do better. I'd find a vineyard in Spain, sip wine, shoot the infected like clay pigeons. Come down here in July. You'll die before you drink. I work the Badlands between Vélez, Malaga and the coast. 30 square miles of dry orchards, cracked villas, sun-bleached buses. Every summer the ground gets meaner, but last year, something changed. The corpses didn't slow down. They swelled. The heat bloated them faster than their brains could rot. They became ballooned sacks of gas with snapping jaws and no blood left to lose. You didn't hear moans. You heard the hiss of methane leaking from the seams. And when you shot them, God help you if you were upwind. The smell. I had a kid apprentice with me last August. Fresh. Thought he was brave because he'd survived a villa siege in Rincon. We were clearing an abandoned estate with solar panels still intact. One of the infected was crawling through the gravel courtyard, half melted from the sun. The kid shot it from too close, back of the skull. It burst. The gas cloud took 10 seconds to reach us, like a fog bank of filth. He dropped his rifle, started gagging, clawing at his throat. Within minutes he had blisters forming around his lips, his neck, like chemical burns. I had to drag him behind a wall, shove his face into dry ash just so he could breathe. He didn't speak for 2 days. You want to know what it's like now? We don't burn corpses. We bury them deep and quick, or we salt them and hang them like meat to dry before they pop. If a walker falls too long in direct sun, its skin hardens into a rind, leathery and black, impossible to pierce without a crowbar or machete. We don't wear body armor anymore. We wear respirators, insect netting, and butcher's gloves soaked in vinegar. I make trades between survivor farms, eggs for ammo, diesel for purified seawater. I ride a rusted Yamaha quad with a fuel leak, and I never stop longer than I need. The summer wind rolls through canyons full of death gas. Some days, it carries the smell so far, you think the infection is already in your chest before you even see one. One time, I found a small group of refugees baking in an overturned van. One woman had a baby swaddled in aluminum foil. I knocked twice on the door. They didn't answer. I opened it. 4 bodies, no bites. Just heat stroke. They'd sealed themselves in to hide from a nearby herd. When I turned back, I saw flies covering their grill. Thousands of them. I left it shut and walked away. You don't open ovens unless you want to see what's cooking. They say rain will save us. It won't. The rain just makes the spores bloom. And then, it's a different hell. There are no winters here anymore. The calendar lost its teeth. The sky burns and the ground steams. This is what happens when the dead don't stop moving, and the air itself becomes part of the rot. The alert chimed on the onboard tablet at 22:40. Respiratory outbreak. Avoid central corridors. Management flagged it yellow, same as dengue advisories. I rolled eyes, thumb swiped acknowledge, and kept timetable. At Parada Jardim Franca, a young man stumbled aboard, suit jacket soaked like he'd fought fire hoses. Farebox light blinked red. He never tapped his card. He just muttered, "Porter," staggered to the articulation joint, and leaned against the bellows until glass smeared dark. A student near the rear rang stop but stayed rooted, watching the stain spread. 3 stops later, passengers started coughing. Dry, no phlegm, more like something tickled them from inside. The suit collapsed at the pivot, limbs jerking. Rear camera showed panicked faces bunching toward the forward cabin. Protocol says, engage hazard flashes, radio dispatch, wait for EMTs. Radio offered only static. My mirror caught the student prying the emergency hammer from its clip. She swung at the side pane, cracked it, screamed at others to follow. Outside, apartment balconies rained flower pots and luggage as residents fled to the avenue, chased by figures jerking like marionettes missing strings. I chose throttle. Mercedes engines were built to climb Serra da Cantareira with a full load. Empty lanes gave me runway. I clipped a moto courier, scattered traffic cones, aimed for the dedicated busway. The interior camera flashed. The suit stood again, face grey, jaw slack. He lurched forward as centrifugal force pinned bodies against rails. One bite landed. Office clerk trying to film with his phone. Blood sprayed the dash shield. At Tietê bus terminal, barricades of Federal Highway police cruisers boxed the exit ramp. Officers flagged me to stop, rifles raised. Infected pounded inside like fists on oil drums. I cracked the driver hatch, shouted that half my passengers were still clean, begged a lane through. A commander shouted back, "No quarantine breach." Portuguese clipped by a respirator mask. I had seconds. Either open doors and let officers sort guilt from innocence, or floor it and gamble the concrete lead-in lane under the viaduct. Steering wheel vibrated from fists behind me, passengers slamming, pleading. One voice, older woman, maybe a nanny, kept repeating, "Tenho neto em casa." The rifles didn't lower. I pressed the service brake, opened the front door halfway, and told civilians nearest the exit to run when I honked twice. The first rifle crack shattered the windshield before I even touched the horn. Glass dust floated like fireflies. I sealed the door, grabbed the dead man lever, and rammed the cruiser blocking the busway. Bull bar folded radiator fins, but polymer headlight glass flew outward like ice shards. Engine screamed, turbo whine rising above gunfire. The infected thrown forward by the hit jammed bodies against the clerk who'd already turned. Blood flowered across his shirt. I drove blind under the viaduct lights until coolant smoke choked the cabin. 50 meters past the toll plaza, the engine seized. I coasted to a service shoulder, keyed battery cutoff, and sprinted out the service hatch. Behind me, the accordion midsection rocked, windows spider-cracking outward, silhouettes hammering. I didn't open it. Couldn't. I tell you this because confession travels farther on shortwave than prayers. I left 15, maybe 20, living people inside with 6 infected because the math looked better for one on foot. I ran alleys, hopped garden walls, reached a Corretora de Cafe warehouse my cousin once rented. Steel shutters still rolled. I hid among burlap coffee sacks, smell of raw beans masking sweat stench. Twice during the night I heard the bus's air brakes groan in phantom memory, but dawn showed no bus, no cruisers, just scorched asphalt and a coyote feasting on something unrecognizable. The first infection bulletin said influenza-like, 2% mortality, stay hydrated. Nobody believed it, but we all wanted a polite apocalypse. Cape Town kept laughing until Parliament Square filled with protesters chanting about fuel prices and viral cover-ups. My partner Leon and I staged our ambulance 2 blocks off Adderley Street, waiting for the usual sprained ankles. At 1400 hours, a March Marshal waved us forward. Someone had collapsed near the statue of Queen Victoria. We nosed through banners and loud hailers. A woman lay on her side, dress torn, blood on her neck. Crowd said a thief cut her. She kept repeating, "He bit me." When I split the wound edges, teeth marks glistened like crescent moons. We loaded her, cleared the crowd, hit siren for Groote Hospital. Siren barely echoed before a man in the next lane staggered, slapped the side door, and smeared his palm red. More people spilled from side alleys, shuffling, grimy, eyes milky. One lurched under our wheels. Leon braked too late. Bumper crunched bone. The body slid, limbs locking in seizure. Then it crawled, hands clawing asphalt, traction like Velcro on loop pile. Groote radioed, "Triage overrun, reroute to New Somerset Hospital." Somerset said the same. We made for the port of Cape Town. Heard rumors Navy patrols ferried patients to anchored quarantine ships. Along dock road, traffic gridlocked, horns blaring until drivers abandoned cars. Pedestrians turned in slow waves, as if one shared instinct tugged their spines toward any noise. By 1600 hours, we lost line of sight to Table Mountain behind acrid smoke. Somebody torched a fuel depot near the grain silos. Flame columns painted the clouds. We took shelter inside the Two Oceans Aquarium service bay, glass walls already spiderwebbed where looters tried to break in for water tanks. Leon welded gate hinges with a portable oxyacetylene kit. Good barricade, bad air, torch stripped oxygen fast, so we alternated burns and breathers. Our patient coded at 1730. No pulse. We didn't risk CPR. The bite wound leaked foul serum. We zipped her in a body bag and strapped it to a hand truck by the jellyfish exhibit, figuring to turn her over to naval quarantine. At 1800 sharp, the bag jerked. Zipper teeth rattled. Leon thought methane buildup. He cracked the zip. Fingers shot out, gripped his collar. He screamed, "Close it," but my gloves slipped on plastic slick with condensation. She tore free, jaws snapping. I pinned her against a penguin feed cart. Leon swung the pry bar. First blow caved cheekbone, but she kept biting. Second hit ended motion. Skull fragments sprayed like sea glass. Sound echoed down empty corridors and pulled more shapes to the service doors. Dock workers we'd seen earlier stacking crates, now shuffling, hands limp. Barricade hinges groaned under weight. We fled through maintenance stairs into the kelp forest gallery. Water tanks 10 meters high, acrylic walls 40 centimeters thick. Fish wheeled in green gloom, oblivious. We heaved benches against stairwell doors, laced bungee cords through railings. Infected pounded from below, muffled thuds syncopated with aquarium pumps. Midnight came. Pumps shut when municipal power died. Water went still. Fish drifted like suspended flags. Silence swallowed the building so deep I heard my own eyelids blink. Leon checked radio every half hour. Nothing but carrier waves. Battery drained. At 0400 we risked exit via roof hatch. Dockyard looked like the end of a fireworks show. Oil drums guttering. Sparks spiraling into mist. Corpses lurched through shipping lanes, bumping hulls. Navy frigates sat offshore, lights dark, listing starboard. No rescue. We siphoned diesel from a forklift, fed it into ambulance, rolled downhill in neutral, engine off to mask noise. Twice we used the siren not for clearing traffic but to draw walkers away from choke points. Sound as bait long enough to slalom around wrecked taxis. On Victoria Road above Camps Bay the engine coughed. Siphon fuel was half seawater. We coasted to a cul-de-sac where beachfront villas stared empty at an ocean chewing itself to foam. There we stay. Villa has solar backup, diesel unit, pantry built for rich owners who never returned from Johannesburg. I patched radio using a yacht VHF whipped to a clothesline mast. Range is poor, but I scanned persistence channels. Coded bursts sometimes crackle southeast, possibly Simonstown Naval Base. I log times, bearings, give them to you. If Cape Town still holds any line, it is thin, stretched from aquarium pumps to villa pantry shelves. But we treat every dressing, every diesel drip, as a signature on life's contract. Walkers don't read fine print. This is Liviu Serban, Senior Maintenance Technician, Unit 2 Turbine Floor, Cernavoda Nuclear Power Station. I'm recording this in the old radio check room behind the containment maintenance wing. The place smells like copper and mold, and the door barely closes. But the power is holding, at least for now. And someone needs to hear this. Not the screamers and the fanatics, but someone who still remembers what it was actually like before we admitted the world had changed. It didn't start like people think. There wasn't a broadcast. There wasn't an explosion. No mass panic. No soldiers at intersections. It started with small things. A rumor from the river docks. A new shift supervisor with dark bags under his eyes who stopped blinking. Crates that smelled wrong, like meat gone bad under ammonia. And then there was Christian. Christian Varga was a second-year systems apprentice on Turbine Floor 2. Eager kid. Bit too eager. Always early. Always asking questions. He started missing safety checks. Then he stopped eating lunch. But what I really remember was how his skin changed. Like paper left in the sun. Yellowed. Tight across the jaw. A sheen on the eyes that didn't catch the light right. He came in late one Thursday. Walked straight past the decon gate without even swiping his ID. We were under full lockdown protocol for internal radiation leak simulation. No one gets in or out without triple check. When I stopped him and said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing, Varga?" He didn't answer. He just tilted his head the way a dog does when it hears something distant, then walked toward the steam vent like it was nothing. I thought he was on something. Synthetic narcotics weren't rare on the lower rungs. The stress, the overtime, the containment pressure. It cracked people. I called it in. They sent medical. He bit the EMT. Not a little bite. He took flesh. I was there. I saw the skin, the gurgling scream. They wrestled him down, gave him ketamine, and wheeled him out strapped to a reinforced gurney. No hazmat, no CDC, no hazmat bags. Just mental health incident scribbled in the log. That was the first time I saw one. But I didn't say Walking Dead. I didn't even think it. The word didn't fit. It felt silly. Like saying alien during a gas leak. This was a nuclear facility, not a comic book. We rationalized it. We always do. And for the next 12 days, everything kept running. Trains still arrived. Cafeteria still served soup. The turbine spun like nothing happened. Only a few of us started noticing more little things. Someone vomited blood near the waste chute and claimed it was food poisoning. A contractor from Bucharest left in the middle of his shift without signing out, and his replacement showed up with the same sunburned eyes and slack jaw as Varga. We caught him chewing fiberglass insulation. He didn't stop even when he bled. That's when I stopped rationalizing. I told Ilinka, one of our containment engineers, that something was wrong. She told me she'd been hearing similar things on the encrypted facility network. Someone from Unit 1 had locked themselves in the secondary core vent chamber for 3 hours, claiming the air on the floor smelled like the morgue. Another had reported bites showing up during sleep. Still, nothing shut down. Because we were government critical infrastructure, no excuses, no evacuations. If the turbines stop, the region goes dark. Constanta, Megidia, Tulcea, all of it. We told ourselves we were imagining it, until the cafeteria fire. Someone, not Christian, he was already gone, started a grease fire, then used fuel gel to try and put it out. I swear to God, he poured a canister of biofuel directly into the flames. He didn't scream when it burned him. He didn't even move. He just stood there in the center of the blaze, skin blackening like old fruit. The fire suppression system activated, but when we pulled him from the foam, he wasn't dead, just laying there, half his face gone, still opening and closing his mouth like he was trying to bite the air. That night, I went home and packed my father's old Mosin. He was a border patrol captain. He taught me how to shoot and how to know when to leave a place behind. I left a note on the door, told Ilinka I'd be back with help. It was a lie. I knew I wouldn't be. I walked 2 days to a dry field station past the canal. No cars. Too many had locked up from cold start faults. I saw 2 more on the road, walking like toddlers, crooked arms, dragging a boot like their joints didn't remember how to bend. I kept my head down, didn't draw attention. One of them sniffed the air when I passed. I don't know if it saw me, but I didn't fire. Not yet. I'm speaking now from that field station. It's wired to the tower, a weak signal, maybe 80 kilometers radius. But it's what I've got. I want to say something now, to anyone who still thinks this came fast. It didn't. It came like rust. One spot, then another, then a slow spread until everything you once trusted collapsed under its own weight. I saw the first signs and kept working. I saw the first man with dead eyes and filed a report. I watched the smoke rise from the cafeteria roof and still checked in for my shift the next morning. We all did. Not because we were cowards, not because we were blind, but because it takes time to believe the world is ending. And by the time we did, it already had. If you're hearing this, and your building still has power, your crew is still showing up, your neighbors are still saying, "We're fine, it's isolated." Take your time, check the corners, listen to what's not being said, because when the rot finally stands up and walks, you won't have time for explanations, just decisions. This is Liviu Serban. I'm alive, for now, somewhere between Cernavoda and nowhere. If you're out there and still sane, stay that way. And that's all I have for now. 40 voices carried across broken airwaves, pulled from battered tapes, salvaged hard drives, scavenged transmitters, proof that we were here, that we are still here. From war zones and shelters, from rooftops and ruins, from frozen forests and sunburned dust bowls, they all spoke into the dark, hoping someone was listening. And you were. Some of them are probably gone now. Some might still be out there, moving silently, living carefully, surviving. And some, maybe some found peace in places we'll never see. But every voice you heard was real. Every moment, every breath shared through static and fear was another reminder that the world didn't end in one day. It ended in 1,000 slow collapses, and we survived every one of them. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.